right. We are good. We are all back. I am really fucking hoping that this internet doesn't bug out on me. This would suck if it bugged out on me at some point. Yeah, I could wait around a little bit. Let me be sure that all of this is good on my end. Be sure that all of this is... Man. That sucks. That really, really sucks. The thing is, like, I don't think this is ever going to be totally good in terms of the internet or anything like that. Man, that truly does suck, because I really wanted this to be, like, crisp and clean. Never really has been that. Never really has been that at all. Go ahead. Declining it. Interesting.
Let's see what happens, but no shenanigans. Don't think you're going to outsmart the Lakers and play some chess here. Look, the Lakers want Braun to resign. The contract he decided got out. Okay. Bronny wanted me to name it called in the draft.
All right. This looks like we finally got somebody in here. Appreciate you for joining again for night 2, day 2 of the draft. It's pretty weird that they would go ahead and put this on 2 days. If you're truly thinking about it, 2 days worth of like the NBA draft, where there's not a whole lot of roster spots at all. It's strange. It's real strange. But I'm excited to get back onto this. Get back on for day 2. Pretty much, I'm almost finished with my draft board, with my order. I essentially got it all down. I watched some of the guys that were drafted yesterday that I hadn't evaluated yet. I'm up to 53 players officially. But technically I know of 3 other players in Juan Nunez from Spain, Cam Spencer, the guard from UConn, and the point guard from Syracuse. His name is Judah Mintz. I know of those 3. There's going to be a couple of guys that I probably don't know too much about, particularly the other 4. The other 4 that I'd have on my board, those guys being Ulrich Shamshi from Cameroon. He's a forward from Cameroon. PJ Hall, the center from Clemson. Ariel Hakaporti, the center from Germany, and Jackson Robinson. Those are the guys that I have on my board named out, but I haven't gotten to them yet. And I know that there's a couple more guys that are more like draft darlings for everybody else. We're talking about guys like Isaiah Crawford, Trenton Flowers. Those 2 in particular, they really, those guys have really went up the draft boards for so many other people that I just don't have yet on my board. And I'm sure that after the draft, maybe once they get drafted, I'll be sure to get over to them soon. But it should be a pretty interesting day worth of draft content, namely because of it being the second day of the draft, but also being because I feel like we're going to see a little bit more movement in the second round in terms of we're going to see teams try to dump some guys, and we've already seen that with a couple of trades earlier today. They're smaller, and there's not too many people here, so I could go ahead and talk about that real quickly. The Toronto Raptors acquired Davion Mitchell and Sasha Vezenkov from the Sacramento Kings and also the 45th pick in the second round. Excuse me. And in return, the Kings received Jalen McDaniels, which is strange because I did think that Davion Mitchell might end up being like a decent buy low candidate, but I didn't think that it would be this low, at least to the point where he would be just salary dumped. I feel like it was mainly because they had to attach somebody to or something to Sasha Vezenkov, $6 million. But it feels like Sacramento's gearing up for something just a little bit bigger. They opened up a roster spot. They opened up a little bit of cap space with that move. So I wouldn't be surprised if they used some of their extra capital or some of their extra players to go ahead and trade for some sort of wing, right? If you wanted to go after a Jeremy Grant who's reportedly out on the market, or who's another wing that's out there on the market? I know that there's some, if you wanted to go after Julius Randle, that would be very funny. But I'm mainly thinking of like bigger wings for Sacramento. I'm thinking about potentially Zach LaVine, buying low on Zach LaVine. That would be something that would be of interest to me because Zach LaVine he for some reason just is not this candidate that anybody wants to go after, which is strange because when you take a look at Zach LaVine, you look at the athletic traits, you look at his ability to score at an extremely efficient level. We go ahead and we sit here and say that should be somebody that should be of interest to so many different people around the league. But it's the $40 million. It's the fact that the Bulls ended up playing so much better than they did when Zach LaVine was not in the rotation and out of the way. So I think that has mainly rubbed people the wrong way. But Zach LaVine should definitely be a good buy low candidate for a lot of teams, and I think Sacramento should definitely be in on it. So as we wait for the Toronto Raptors to get on the clock, oh my God, that's so stupid. That's so stupid. Why? They have the draft scheduled for 1 o'clock. For 1 o'clock Arizona time. And they go ahead and put it on tape delay, it feels like. I mean, it says that the draft resumes in 12 minutes and it's already 1:03. What is the point of delaying the damn draft? You already have such a difficult time starting games on time. It's always a 10 to 15 minute delay with some of the nationally televised games. It's ridiculous. It's so stupid. Now I gotta sit here and talk about the implications of a freaking Wendell Moore trade and extract that out for 10 more minutes. But that was just it was a strange salary dump. The fact that you had to salary dump and attach a pretty valuable second round pick at pick 37 to dump $2 million is strange. But if it was just a matter of they didn't want to cut their ties there, they just wanted to freely get off of the money to go after or sign some of their other draft picks like a Dillingham, like a Terrence Shannon, then I understand it. I completely understand moving off of those $2 million. But the fact that they had to attach an asset to it is strange. It is very, very strange. I mean, Detroit gets to buy low on it. on a player like that. He's just been a very stocky, athletic defender who hasn't gotten a lot of playing time from Minnesota. So maybe he gets that opportunity over there in Detroit. But they're mainly only doing that for that trade up from, I believe it was 51. It was either 51 or 53 to 37, which is a pretty substantial jump if you're asking me. And then AJ Griffin, he ended up getting traded from Atlanta to Houston for the 44th pick in this year's draft. It's a shame with AJ Griffin. He was touted as a really good shooter coming out of Duke. I think he came from Duke, but he slipped in that first round. I think he went 16th to Atlanta. We all thought it was pretty damn good value, but unfortunately they go ahead and they stock up on a shitload of wings. Sadiq Bey, DeAndre Hunter, Bogdanovich, Jalen Johnson is rising to the occasion now. And I know that there's probably a couple that slip in my mind right now, but all four of those players were ahead of AJ Griffin in the rotation. He never really got the requisite playing time. Now, you could certainly make the case that he's probably not going to get the same playing time or an extended amount of playing time over in Houston, because they also have a ton of wings, but with the expectation that Houston is going to make some drastic move to their core, it wouldn't be surprising if this was just a buy low move and getting prepared to ship out a ton of assets for some star player. Who that star player is, we know it's not Kevin Durant. We know it's not Devin Booker. We all know that. Or at least I hope everybody knows that those guys are not available for trade. But if we're talking about a Donovan Mitchell, if you're able to convince him on a vision in Houston, and aside from that, I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time envisioning a good world where AJ Griffin gets not only the requisite playing time, but Houston also getting that star. It feels like they're kind of jumping ahead of schedule for a team that at the end of the day only had one 500 season, and that was last year, and they were well behind some of the other teams that were in the Western Conference and competing for the play-in spot. But we have a couple more things that I guess we could talk about beforehand. Oh, Jesus. So they sent out they sent out another second round pick with Mitchell, Vezenkov, and 45. It's very weird. McDaniels didn't have a very good season at all for the Raptors. I thought he was going to be a good buy low candidate when they first signed him, and then, that's a lot of length still. But the defense didn't show up. The athletic traits didn't show up. The shooting didn't show up at all. So it was just not a very, very good situation for Jalen McDaniels. And we can move off of them from there. The Nuggets just re-signed Jamal Murray to a 4-year extension, I believe it was. I think the number I saw was $207 million. $209 million. Expensive, but you understand that they are trying to keep that three together because they play off of each other so well. Those three that I'm talking about being Jokic, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. If you wanted to throw in the fourth person in Aaron Gordon, that would be cool. I'd be totally fine with that. He really unlocks the team in terms of being a legitimate France cut threat where everybody has to worry about him in the paint. And from there, it leaves some of the best shooters in the league open in KCP and Michael Porter Jr. But to go along with that little tidbit of news, the Nuggets guard KCP is going to decline his player option. He's going to become a free agent, and the expectation is that he's going to get a shitload of money. That teams like the Sixers, the Orlando Magic are going to be among some of the strongest suitors. It's not surprising at all from there. It's been a main catalyst for 2 championship winners for the Lakers 4 years ago and the Nuggets just 2 seasons ago now. and really showed to be pivotal. He really does not miss from beyond the arc, it feels like. I believe he was close to 40% from downtown. I can look up Caldwell Pope's stats from last year. KCP shot 46% from the field, 41% from downtown. And the season before that, he shot, again, 46% from the field and 42% from downtown. So he is just an absolute knockdown shooter that if you're looking at a Philadelphia that has a ton of cap space, or an Orlando who has cap space and has a need for shooting, that seems like a very plausible option, somebody that you could definitely throw $18 to $20 million at. I would definitely do that if I was any of those two teams in particular. Otherwise, I wouldn't envision another spot where he would be not only valued and be a great fit, but also be on a team that's trying to win or is close to winning. And I think those two teams are close to winning. So KCP declining his option, it definitely is a big deal. And if Denver loses that, do they have the faith in Christian Brown or Julian Strawther to come in, or Peyton Watson for that matter, to come in and be that two guard for the team? Are they able to play competently and enough to a point where the loss of KCP isn't going to be a detriment to the team? I think that's the questionable thing. I think that's very, very questionable. So it would definitely be a big loss, and it would definitely open a couple of doors for perhaps Minnesota to go up the rankings and OKC to be to continue to be higher than the Denver Nuggets. But it also opens doors for teams like the Clippers if they bring back their core, like the Suns, some of these older teams, the Mavericks, of course, some of these other teams that are going to be going to be buying and are going to be keeping their core guys for now, is how I'll describe it. They'll keep their core guys for now. And it would be a huge loss if they were to lose KCP. I think that's a good way to end off on that. So 3 minutes until everything restarts. It's not the greatest thing in the world to blue ball your fans and say that it starts at 1 and instead it starts at 1:15. Not sure what the delay is there, but I could be very picky about that all night long. I'm curious. Like, I did see something relatively recently. Let me find the tweet. It was from like NBA Central aggregating some other article about De'Aaron Fox waiting and seeing what the team ends up doing for him in terms of the roster construction before he signs an extension, which is, it's curious, it's interesting. And from there, I wonder if there is a bigger level of urgency from the Sacramento Kings to go ahead and perhaps bring in a bigger name, and whether Jeremy Grant or Kyle Kuzma, that's the guy that I was thinking. Kyle Kuzma or Jeremy Grant, are they going to be big enough needle movers for this team to enter contention at all? The Devin Carter pick is interesting. I think that he could, if you ever decided to move on from De'Aaron Fox, that's a precursor. I don't anticipate a De'Aaron Fox move or much more fire or smoke about him not returning to the Kings, but I think it's an interesting proposition. I do think so. So maybe they do go after a Zach LaVine and try to be extremely aggressive in that way. I'd like the fit. I think any team out there would be really smart, and they would look really smart if they went ahead and bought low on a Zach LaVine type. So not yet. I think we are going to have Stewart back on. Stewart will be back for day 2. We try to bring on one of my one of the OG people that have joined the show, Carson. It looks like he might not be able to join, but that's totally fine. It's totally fine. I understand his reasoning. He was jamming out to Kit Leroy yesterday, so that's totally good. Totally good. So the Bulls trying to move off of Nikola Vucevic. That's not a surprise at all. Terrible defensive player, and really regressed as a floor spacer, as a finisher around the rim. Didn't really provide any value to that Chicago team in in any positive realm. So it's not surprising that they want to move off of him. It wasn't surprising that they were one of the teams that were aggressively trying to move up for a Donovan Clingan, a Zach Edey. They ended up taking a really good player still in Modest Bazelis. I was happy about that pick for him. But I certainly think Chicago should be in the middle of a rebuild. This is not a very great situation for trying to win at all. I mean, after all, they traded their best asset for freaking Josh Giddey, which is the weirdest thing in the world. And I wonder if that sort of allows for a potential retaining of Vooch or Levine, knowing that those guys are unwanted assets, and maybe Caruso would have been a sweetener in a potential deal where a team gives up multiple picks, multiple assets for those two. But without Caruso being in those packages, I am curious, do they just run it back with mainly the same core? So the Raptors are finally on the clock. Again, it's much different than in previous drafts to have a 2-day slate for the NBA draft. So the way that they changed it up a little bit, so it looks like they're in like a small little conference room, it feels like, of some of the remaining invitee green room invites, like a Kyle Filipowski, some guys that were in the green room and didn't get selected. Looked like they were all in a room, like a pretty small room, and teams are given 4 minutes now to select players in the second round, no longer 2 minutes, which was making the draft much quicker in the previous however many years that they've been doing this before they did the two-day draft. I wouldn't be surprised if a team like Toronto ends up trying to sell this pick. I mean, after all, it is still the second round. Don't get me wrong, you're not getting the high upside Ryan Dunns of the world, but there are certainly prospects available that would help contending teams. If we're looking at somebody like a Johnny Furphy, who is still available, Tyler Smith would be a very, very fun pick. Tyler Kolek from Marquette would be a very good point guard. I totally forgot to mention yesterday about particularly players who are they're high on my board but haven't been selected. I completely forgot and passed over Tyler Smith. He's a G League Ignite wing who I think is just mainly a great offensive scorer. In a lot of ways reminds me of like a John Collins, and I know that sort of feels like it's contradictory, but there is aspects of pick and pop. There is aspects of being a lob threat that I think Tyler Smith has, but it's the thing that sort of separates the two of them is the fact that Tyler Smith has a pretty damn solid handle, and he could provide a little bit, just a tad bit of isolation scoring ability. He needs to remain engaged defensively speaking, but it was certainly surprising because the offensive potential of Tyler Smith is worth a first round pick, a late first round pick, and him being in the second round is surprising. He came out as my 19th ranked prospect, and I am curious if there is somebody, perhaps like a Utah, a Milwaukee, that are in dire need of a scoring wing or an athletic wing that can play now, given that a guy like Jay Crowder is a free agent, given that they want to move off of Brook Lopez. I think that they want to go the route of just younger assets, younger players. So Toronto's pick is in. I'm going to remember this time around to let y'all know that the pick is in. I'm not sure what Toronto ends up doing. I mean, I could go ahead and check if there's any trades at all. Doesn't seem like it. Doesn't seem like it. But I don't know. Like, they feel like a team that would go after a big man. They drafted Christian Kolek 2 seasons ago. His first season, he showed to be a really damn solid rim protector. Then he had a blood clot, and he ended up having to be waived, and I think he might be medically retiring because of it. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go after another big man. The best available in my eyes is a Kyle Filipowski, but that doesn't feel like a Toronto Raptors big man. So I'm sort of looking at an Oso Ighodaro from Marquette. I'm looking at a Jonathan Mogbo from San Francisco. And honestly, that's all that I'm looking at in terms of big men. I think that those two and Kyle Filipowski are the only two viable big men for that team to select. Because they have quite a bit of guards. They just acquired Davion Mitchell. They already have quite a bit of wings. And the pick is in. It's just about to be announced. So it is Jonathan Mogbo. Okay. So I'm going to try again with this sharing stuff. I realized yesterday that every time I tried to share my screen, it was just moving my camera instead of moving my camera and showing the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, try this again. We'll just go the entire screen. So I know that you see that, and that's weird. But let's go over to Jonathan Mogbo. I finished his evaluation last night. He came out as my 45th ranked prospect. So not entirely high. A bit of a reach in terms of the players that I have available. That is better than him in my eyes. He is really unique in the sense that he looks like a slender big. He is a smaller big, as it says 6'6", but I saw on some other site he said 6'8", so it's either of the two. He's either 6'6" or 6'8". But he has a really nice handle. He has a really good ability to go head down and get to the rim. But he really only is a lob threat or somebody that is going to finish in the paint. If he's outside of it, he's going to have a hard time doing so. But he's a hell of a rebounder. He has really good mobility. That's just really tantalizing if you're looking at some of the more versatile bigs in the NBA. You certainly look at like a Naz Reid, which is absolute best case scenario for him, and probably the best comparison in terms of his athletic ability and his mobility. It's a fine pick. It's a fine pick. It definitely is a Toronto Raptors-esque pick, but I probably would have went a different direction if you wanted to go the big man route. So there we go. So Utah is back up again. Had a pretty solid draft or solid first round yesterday by bringing in Cody Williams and by bringing in Isaiah Collier. Collier is a guy who has a difficult time with the shooting aspect, which is why I was a little bit lower on him compared to some of the other draft guys that I follow. They loved him. I saw him as number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5 on other people's boards, and I thought, wow, that's really high for a guy that really did not produce. Because I also factor in what they were able to show me in terms of production. Was there good efficiencies there? Is there physical traits that are good enough there? And I see what they're seeing in the sense that they are, particularly with Collier, he's really good at getting to the paint. He knows how to drive, utilize angles and pick and rolls to really get into the paint and make decisions, whether that be finishing, whether that be kicking out. Reminiscent of like a Colin Sexton and Eric Bledsoe. So they get themselves like that guard yesterday. They bring in Cody Williams as a versatile wing. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to go after like another big man, just because they have a legit love for big men. Or if they trade out, like I can certainly envision a world where some contender buys pretty highly. Not sure what they ended up doing, but we do have Stewart back. He's back.
Hello. I'm back.
Up and early. How do you feel about this being a 2-day event now?
I don't know if it's entirely necessary. Obviously, there's only 30 teams and there's only 2 rounds, so it's kind of, I feel a little redundant, but I guess it makes it more of a spectacle, and I guess that's what the NBA is trying to go for. So,
I mean,
maybe
this
it'll
is really
succeed in that.
They really are the only marketable thing for the NBA. It's just the off season. Their product has not been too great recently.
Yeah.
And the Jazz pick up Filipowski.
Oh wow.
So I forgot to. Oh, I know you love the pick.
I like that.
So we're gonna go at it again, with probably going back and forth between who we like between him and some of the other guys that are out there. But we could go over to Filipowski. He came out as my 31st. So in an ideal world, he was probably the 31st pick. Really good post-up scorer, really good face-up guy, really solid in the mid-range, pretty good touch. And I think the thing that you could nitpick defensively is the fact that he's not the most mobile guy, and that's totally fine. But if you could turn out to be like a Jokic on defense, who isn't great, but if you could have good enough coordination on pick and roll defense, and you can still be active with your hands and cause deflections and show a little bit of effort, you could be a pretty positive defensive playmaker. And Filipowski does provide quite a bit of that. Now, as a playmaker, he does a decent job of it. He's a quick decision maker, but I think that he can force the issue sometimes. I wish that he could finish at the rim a little bit better. Ultimately, it's not the worst pick in the world. I think about Filipowski as like a Hartenstein, a Kelly Olynyk. In a worst case scenario, he's like a Yusuf Nurkic. So it's not the worst thing in the world. They needed another big man, and I'm totally fine with it. He was the best big man on the board.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about him is that he's a versatile player. He can kind of play all over the court. He can shoot the mid-range pretty well. He can get down and dirty in the post, and you'd like to see that post work get a little bit more improved as he gets into the NBA. But I believe he has the tools and the basketball IQ and the will to get better at that, and I think that's something that he can work on and improve on. And I think he has all the tools, he has all the abilities, and I think he has the potential to be really good.
Yeah, for sure. Slump, you have a question. It's free to ask questions, boss man. Go ahead and ask anything and everything you'd like. But Milwaukee up on the clock. They selected AJ Johnson yesterday, who I ended up watching last night after the draft. And I'll put it lightly, like I don't like him much at all. Oh man, that's so I have a feeling about who this guy is. That's a good question. But I'm not going to answer it for you. If this is who I think it is, I annoyed the shit out of this person by milking this same joke to him, and he would tease me for it, and that's totally fine. It's totally fine now. But in the time, I did not like it. I thought it was a great joke. But
you gotta answer it. You're saying you gotta answer it, and you got to now.
So I absolutely know who this is. I don't know. Why do you never see elephants hiding in trees, Dallin?
No way.
Name dropping you, man. But AJ Johnson being the pick yesterday was not it was not a good pick. He came out after I did a lot more yesterday. So, by the way, I ended up watching 12 more guys, wrote up on 12 more guys, technically watched like 3 more after that, but didn't finish their write-ups in time. He came out to number 40 on my board. He's competitive, he's athletic, he has a good handle, but he has no playmaking chops. He didn't really get very many minutes overseas, so it gets a really good. It reminds me a lot of like a Bender, not in the sense of like that they play similarly, but I get scared of international guys going ahead and not producing and not playing very many minutes at all, and them being top 5 picks. Now, this is a different situation because it is pick 23, and you do want to take a swing on the athletic traits that he has. But I think that there's better guys, better players that were on the board that probably would have been more beneficial to their needs, where, yeah, they needed an athletic player. I just didn't think that it should have came at that guard spot. And that, to put it like this, size matters in the NBA. So I think getting a more sizable guy would have been beneficial. He was only 6'4", 167 pounds. Not very good physical traits there. Athletically, he's good, has potential, but I'm not gonna be totally in love with that pick at all.
Yeah, I get that. I probably would agree. And we have the Bucks up again. Who do you think they're gonna take with this pick? Who's your favorite player on the board for them?
So I mentioned this while I was talking to myself for 40 minutes. Or no, that's not a 4, that's a 3. For 30 minutes, Tyler Smith was the highest rated player on my board that I just didn't talk about yesterday. He's my number 19 player as the pick is in. Let me bring up the banner again. I'm really trying to get the banner down. There you go. Okay. Tyler Smith.
Your boy.
So, my guy, Mr. Tyler Smith. So, I already have him up. He's a very athletic 4. He's a very offensive-minded 4 who can be a pretty good catch-and-shoot guy. He can move around on the perimeter pretty well. And I thought he was a really good screener and a really good roller. Good hands, good lob threat, and showed some pretty decent pick-and-pop ability, which in a Doc Rivers offense where you are running a 5-out system, that's pretty beneficial. Now, I do want to give him a little bit of slack because of the fact that the G League Ignite program was just such a flawed program, and the team was very bad. They didn't really have the cleanest of game plans defensively or offensively. But even without them, even when they were sort of playing free, Tyler Smith got very, very lost very often on the defensive end. And I think that's fine in the sense that in the NBA, he's going to be game planned for way more, and he's going to be sticking to a script way more than he did at the G League Ignite. So I have confidence there that he could be a positive defender. And he wasn't the biggest movement guy, biggest movement shooter, but I think he should just be totally fine with being a pick and pop guy and a legitimate lob threat. So I imagine him being a guy that comes out of the corner often on basket cuts and can be set up for lobs real well. And I think that's totally good for a Bucks team that, again, needs to find more athletic wings as they are getting just a little bit older.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like you said, he's an athletic wing. They did that really badly. And at worst, he's going to be a good depth piece for a team in the Bucks that's trying to make a run for another finals championship. And I think that he can be a good piece off the bench his first year and really learn and grow and gain that confidence as he gets into the NBA and potentially grow in his skills and become a more consistent player in the NBA. And we'll see how that turns out for him. And he's going to a good Bucks team. he's got good leaders around him, and see how he turns out.
So that was relatively quick. The Blazers just turned in their pick. Blazers had a pretty interesting night yesterday, trading for Deni Avdija, buying with their late lottery pick, trading away Malcolm Brogdon, and bringing in a Deni Avdija, who I do like and is an interesting fit over there, as they are sort of gearing up to be a full-on young team and trading away the likes of a Jeremy Grant, a Robert Williams perhaps. And they also selected Donovan Klingen, where they are supersizing their team or supercharging their team with a ton of size. And I am curious if they end up going the route of trading away like a Robert Williams, if they end up putting Ayton at the 4, which I don't know if you remember. DA went ahead and said, either in his pre-draft process or in some interview, went ahead and said he would like to play the 4. He is a 4. He doesn't really like playing center. And a lot of people after that trade or that draft pick of Klingen immediately pointed at the max contract of DA and said, hey, those guys are going to be traded. I can definitely see a world where they decide, hey, DA had a really good season from a jump shooting perspective. He shot a lot more outside of the paint in the second half of the season. Maybe they believe that he is a little bit more of a stretch big in next season and beyond. Do you think that's a realistic scenario? Do you envision DA being a little bit more of a stretch big going into the future with this Blazers squad?
Offensively, yeah, I could definitely see that becoming a possibility where he can become a consistent option in that 4 spot. But I just see a lot of problems when it comes to defensively and offensive rebounding. Yeah, you're going to have insanely tall players at the 4 and the 5, but I just think DA has never really had the best footwork when it comes to defense. He always has trouble staying in front of guys, and if he's put out on maybe smaller, quicker 4s, he's going to struggle with that immensely. And I think that's something that can be exploited by a smart opposing team with good athletic wings and forwards. And it's an interesting idea to have those kinds of players, and we did see it kind of work with Kat and Rudy, but I just think those are two completely different players from DA, and I don't know if it would work exactly.
Sure. And I do want to, I'm not sure if the Blazers have another pick, but I do want to circle back to them at some point. But in the meantime, they did select your boy,
my guy,
in particular, Tyler Kolek. Hold up. New York via Portland. So this looks like it's New York's pick. Let me double check that really quickly. Yeah, the Knicks traded up to go ahead and select Tyler Kolek. Fascinating. All right, there's no details. There's no details on it, but just to give the very quick rundown of Mr. Tyler Kolek, he was my number 26 player on the board. Just know that he is an extremely smart point guard that knows how to pass. He led the nation last year in assists per game and really knows how to manipulate defenders with his eyes and opening up a number of different lanes. Should be a good shooter off of the catch. He shot 46% from there, and he's a competitive defender. From a size perspective, he's going to be picked on. We're going to say that about every sub 6'2" guard for a very long time. And he's just not much of an off the dribble shooter, which I would have preferred to see out of a point guard like that has the ball in his hands often. But he should be a solid enough backup point guard to warrant like maybe a 20-minute per game role if he is in the right spots. And for a spot in New York who is reportedly trying to trade away Deuce McBride, this is a much cheaper option and fits a little bit more of a playmaking need off of the bench that the team simply put just does not have and probably wasn't going to get in free agency.
Yeah, I really like Kolek. I really like his game. He's a really, really energetic player on the court. He's always moving around. He's always got really good court vision. He really knows the game. He looks to make his teammates around him better. He's maybe, in my opinion, one of the best elevators of a team in the draft this year. You could really see that in the Marquette team that did really well this season in basketball, in college basketball. And I think he's going to be a good fit for a Knicks team coming off the bench. He's going to bring some life to a bench that was kind of a little bit lacking this year.
Yep. And we kind of have to make it a quick transition because Mr. Johnny Furphy from Kansas is the pick here. And it is not going to be – he's not going to be in San Antonio. He is an Indiana Pacer at pick number 35. They traded up one spot to go ahead and select him. So Mr. Johnny Furphy, where did he come out? 34. He was number 34 on my board. And I think the main thing that you think about with players like this is just good shooters. And he only shot 35% from there, which is average, but I think as a solid spot-up option, that's pretty solid. And at 6'7", that's a tall shooter. And you can't have enough of those types of players who you can't have enough tall shooters is what I'm trying to get at. He finds open space really well as a cutter. He knows how to lift from the corner and make himself available for a potential drive and kick. I'll always be concerned about his defense. He's a severely deficient athlete, and you can talk about the defense. You can talk about how he moves out on the perimeter, but he also isn't just he's not an explosive athlete to drive by his defender at all. So you kind of have to have him be more of a jump shooting type of wing. But they are set to lose a guy in Doug McDermott, who I think is one of my player comps. Yes, Doug McDermott, Grady Dick. He sort of absolutely fits that tall shooter mold that Doug McDermott does, and I think that he could fill a decent role over there in Indiana.
Yeah, I think he'll be a good piece to a young Pacers team that's looking to compete and really do well. They're going to get Benedict Mathurin back this year. They're going to return with Tyrese Halliburton. They already had a really great run in the Eastern Conference playoffs. And I think a player like Johnny Murphy can help expand that team offensively as a great, as you said, stand-up shooter and really knock down some big threes for a team that really could use it. They could have maybe used some more defensive pieces. I mean, they really have Miles Turner on defense, and that's kind of all they have. But I think he has the size that potentially he could become an all-right defender if he can get maybe show some more athleticism than we really got to see in Kansas. But I don't know. We'll just have to see how he turns out for a Pacers team that's looking to compete now, but is still young.
So we got a comment here talking about Terrence Shannon. This is from our guy, Dre. Terrence Shannon Jr., one of Minnesota's picks last night, is 1.5 years older than Anthony Edwards. Interesting. I did not know that. It's just wild. Shows how much of a beast Ant is while being so young. I mean, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, some of it is a little bit different because Terrence Shannon wasn't this highly touted player going into college. He was a little bit more of like a wing prospect. But yes, absolutely. Anthony Edwards was always a baller in high school and college. People had their doubts on Anthony Edwards, and I never bought it one bit. And he's going to be really good for a really long time. I think we know that with Edwards, but I think we could say the same thing about a Terrence Shannon, who we both really like here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I did like Terrence Shannon a lot.
Okay, so the Spurs with the Indiana pick selected Juan Nunez. So this was one of the guys that I didn't finish my write-up on him, but this was one of the guys that I did end up watching. Very much a pure point guard. Very much a pure point guard. If you were to talk about the best passers in this draft, I think about him. I think about Sheed. I think about Kolek, as well as Nikola Topic. But he's definitely up there with Topic in terms of being able to manipulate defenses and really throw some crisp passes. He's probably the best pure point guard in this draft class. And he is absolutely on the smaller side, which is not the greatest thing in the world, but he is certainly a guy that over in San Antonio, where they are. Oh, that is interesting with San Antonio, because I do like Trey Jones. They just drafted Stephon Castle. Does that mean that a Trey Jones ends up being out on the trade market? Are they going to use that chip later on? It's interesting with the fit over in San Antonio, but they've always had an affinity for some of the international guys, so it's really not the most surprising thing in the world that Nunez would be the pick here.
Yeah, I really like Nunez. I like the facilitator that he is. I feel like that's going to be a nice piece for a San Antonio team that has a lot of really good offensive options. Obviously, you have Victor Wembanyama. You just drafted Stephen Castle.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to be able to be a type of player that can really maximize the potential of those players, get them into spots where they can succeed at a higher level than they had before. And I think he can increase the overall potential of the team dramatically.
As more so of like that off the bench type of guard.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think he shot the ball better this season. I found out that he just was not always the greatest floor spacer on his previous teams. Now, he only shot 32% on about 2.5 attempts last season, which isn't the greatest percentage, but I think that in due time, he'll be able to find a little bit more consistency, because I did like his form a little bit. But you certainly would like for him to be a little bit more of a scoring threat given his size. You don't want him to just be the most pure point guard out there.
Absolutely.
So Detroit's up on the clock here. What did they end up? They selected Ron Holland in the draft at pick 5. They ended up getting this pick from Minnesota from a salary dump where they sent Wendell Moore and pick 37 to Detroit. And this should be interesting right around here for Detroit. I think that they are very functionally amiss and very functionally behind everybody else with not just their roster construction, but their front office. It doesn't feel entirely stable. If we had to go with like somebody ideal here, I'm sort of looking at like a shooting type. I would take a chance on like a Cam Christie. Just a awesome shooter with really good footwork. I'm sure that they're going to find size with like a Tobias Harris in free agency or somebody of that sort. But I think that getting a shooter in there would be extremely beneficial. Do you think, are we on the same page there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they really need a shooter. They really don't have that on the team right now. You have a really good facilitator and playmaker in Cade Cunningham, and that's really all you have, in my opinion, on this Pistons team. This Pistons team needs a lot of work, and getting a shooter with high potential like Cam Christie could be a really big boom for this team. Which, to be frank, really desperately needs it. And I think in this position, you just kind of need to take those upside picks. I think Cam Christie has a lot of upside, especially shooting wise. And yeah, I think that's a great suggestion for sure. Now
the Pistons, they're still without a head coach. They fired Monty Williams about a week ago, if my memory is serving me right. They did bring in an assistant coach before their head coach. His name was Fred Vinson. He was highly regarded as one of the best shooting coaches in the league. And so I think that is pretty enticing when you're considering that they have a bunch of non-shooters like a Sar Thompson, like a Ron Holland. And if they select a shooter right here, that would be very nice. Bobby Klintman. Okay, so Bobby Klintman, let's go right on over to him. Totally forgot about Klintman. He was my number 28 player on the board. Much more raw of a player. I think in the realm of like a Trevor Ariza, Cam Johnson, where he's not very good at creating his own shots, even if he has the height and the length to do so. I think that he doesn't. I don't think that he has the greatest switching ability. I don't think he has the greatest athletic traits like how these two do. But I do think he has pretty good shooting touch, and I think that he takes advantage of good passing lanes. Like it feels like a lot of the guys that play in Europe really develop an ability to play pretty much any position, it feels like. Now, I'm not saying that you could just stick this skinny guy over at a center spot, but he is a good enough rebounder. He is a good enough playmaker for his spot, and a really good shooter that is going to be extremely beneficial for a team that, again, we just discussed, doesn't have the shooting at all.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. He's a good shooter, which, like as you said, they needed, but his versatility is also going to be nice for a team that has a lot of holes. If it allows them to be more flexible when they go into free agency, next year's draft, if Bobby Klintman becomes a big piece of this team, he can play in a bunch of different spots, and they'll be more free to pick the best player available in drafts or just sign the best player available that they need in free agency. And I think what he does is offer versatility to a team that just needs it, and also to a team that needs it even more.
And they also have a ton of cap space too. Now, I'm not sure if they, like I brought up a Tobias Harris. I still wouldn't be surprised if they offered him like a $15 million contract, which I don't know how others would feel about that. But I also wouldn't be surprised if they just continue to take on more second round picks to take on salary, like how they did with this selection here by taking on the $2 million. Granted, it's just $2 million, but very clearly nobody else really wanted a Wendell Moore. So for them to take on assets, I'm curious if that's just the route that they end up going down for the rest of the offseason.
Yeah. These picks are flying. Knicks have already put their pick in as well. Or not the Knicks, the Thunder, excuse me.
Thunder. All right, it's a good thing. Yes, okay. I completely misread that tweet. So, yes, it is OKC's pick. It is OKC's pick. Had a pretty interesting draft pick last night with Topic. And by all accounts, it does seem like he is going to miss most, if not all, of next season, which is disappointing in a lot of ways. I mean, they still have Alex Caruso as their main point of attack guy from the guard spot, and they essentially replaced Giddey with another really good playmaking type. But now they don't have that playmaking type currently on the roster for their playoff run next year, where they are clearly trying to go all in. So I'm curious if they end up looking at another guard here. I think that's the bet that I'm taking, is that they end up taking another guard here who can take on a bulk of the playmaking.
Yeah, I mean, a Juan, Nunez, or Kolek would have been amazing here, but sadly for them, neither of them are up. So finding that playmaker is going to be interesting to see what they do with this pick.
So, Thunder pick. Jesus Christ. AJ Mitchell from UC Santa Barbara. We could talk about him real quick. He was one of the guys that I ended up getting to early this morning. So, AJ Mitchell, it's a pretty basic evaluation. I talk about manipulating defenses and trying to open up spots out on the court. He is also one of the guys that does a really good job at that. He's a really good driver. He creates driving lanes. And sometimes it's to a fault where he forces something that isn't there and just gets walled up. But I think that he has good body control, good footwork to get to the rim. And he improved his three-pointer last season, 40% on 3 attempts a night. He's a little bit more of a standstill guy more than anything, but I think that's totally fine when your main objective is to distribute. Now, he's got to prove that the shooting is real, because he only shot 29% in his first 2 years. And I think that he's got to do a better job of when to utilize his changing of speeds, because he's probably going to be walled up quite a bit in the NBA which means he's probably going to have to divert to the mid-range a little bit more. And he hasn't shown much of a willingness to shoot in the mid-range, so that'll be an interesting thing. I had better point guards available, but in the ideal scenario, you are getting like a Trey Mann and Andrew Nemhard type who can just do just a little bit of everything. And that's totally fine if you're an OKC team that already has damn near everything.
Exactly. Just so you know, when you, I think, tried to show your screen again, it didn't show. Just thought you'd
Oh my God.
That. But yeah, I go for it. What were you saying?
I was going to say that I had this same problem yesterday, and I did not know the entire stream. I hope everybody's seeing what I'm trying to share. If the few people that are here, can you let me know if you guys have seen my screen at all throughout the stream? But you could go ahead and talk about them.
Well, just real quick, I've seen it a couple times, but just that time I didn't really see it. But AJ Mitchell's interesting. Like you said, he's a good playmaker for a team that really doesn't have one anymore after they traded away their best playmaker, Josh Giddey. But I think he's going to be an interesting piece that can come off the bench and be a playmaker for a Thunder bench that really is lacking it. And I think he probably won't amount to too much, but he's probably going to be a good depth piece, a good bench piece for this Thunder team that's hoping to make a good run.
Yeah. So we did get a question. Will Bronny be going to the Lakers? First of all, Jonathan, appreciate your question in the chat. Yes, I feel confident in that. Now, I would not be surprised, mainly because the rumors have been loud about Phoenix being interested in Bronny James, regardless of whether or not they could get LeBron with them. So, I wouldn't be surprised if they utilized their new 3 to 4 second-round picks and traded up far into the 40s or into the late 40s to get his services. But I think you should pencil it in that Bronny is going to be an LA Laker.
Yeah, I would agree. I just don't see any other team that he's going to go to. I don't think he's good enough for really any other team to really want to draft that just for him. And I don't really see LeBron going anywhere else other than back to the Lakers. I mean, maybe Cleveland, but that's not going to happen, I don't think. And I really just don't see any other situation where Bronny gets drafted. I think he either gets drafted by the Lakers or he doesn't get drafted at all. And yeah, that's kind of the two situations I see.
I do want to, when he does get picked by the Lakers, I do want to have add a little bit more of my thoughts to it, because I do think he's not the greatest prospect. He's certainly wouldn't have been he's not top 50 on my board, which says quite a bit about some of the depth that's in this class, but also due to the point that he didn't really produce a whole lot over at USC. But I think that he's just a tad bit underrated in some aspects that I'm excited to get to. I'm excited to get to Bronny when he ends up getting picked. But the Grizzlies are up on the clock to be sure that there's no trade. Jaylen Wells. So I got to him just before we got on. So I hope you're able to see the screen this time, Stuart, and everybody else.
I cannot, but maybe everyone else can.
Oh, Jesus, that sucks. Let me stop sharing my screen real quickly and try this again. All right, can we see it now?
I can see it now, yeah.
Okay, so I know what I need to do. Okay, Jaylen Wells from Washington State. He is one of the most efficient three-point scorers in this class and can shoot it from a number of different plays. As a catch-and-shoot guy, off-the-dribble guy, he has a lightning quick release that sort of reminds me of like a Duncan Robinson, a Jordan Poole, and that's just me talking about the release, not necessarily the play type. shot 42% on 5 attempts a game. That's really good if you know anything about shooters like that. He's a very confident shooter. He's a very low turnover player, and he has a really good handle and pull-up ability in both the mid-range and from 3 to make me think he could be a potential shot creator on whatever team that he ends up going to. Now, he's not a finisher around the rim one bit, and he's going to have to add that to his game to continue to keep defenses on their toes. He was a bit of a ball watcher on defense, and the effort on the defensive end is wishy-washy, especially when he is off of the ball. But I believe this pick was going to Memphis, and I would not be surprised if they ended up trading away a guy like a Luke Kennard to get off of some salary. And Jaylen Wells, I think, could definitely be... That's a great comparison, actually, as I'm sort of thinking about it. Luke Kennard, he could be the Luke Kennard of this team.
Yeah, I mean, I like Jaylen Wells. He's kind of a big reason why Washington State was able to surprise a lot of people this year and play really, really well and make the NCAA tournament and even play well in that. He's, like you said, a good shooter, a great shooter. He's an athletic, pretty large forward. You're right. He is kind of a watcher on defense. He's kind of not always maybe aware of what's going on defense, but I think he has the tools to improve on defense, which is always what you're wanting to see. And I think he fits a Memphis team that's really an athletic and explosive team. And I think he can definitely fit in right in with those kinds of guys.
Absolutely. Let me tell you the one thing that I'm annoyed with not in terms of like what any of the players or the draft or anything, with the stream. I see on my screen that between our cameras, it's clean and it is, not delayed or anything. I went on to YouTube maybe like at the start of the stream, and I see that my camera is really choppy. I see that the voice is delayed and it's not syncing up right. I'm very annoyed by it. I can't plug in an Ethernet, and I tried to do that beforehand. Just wanted to rant about that real quickly. It's just been a very annoying time trying to get my connection good.
Yeah, I did notice that too. I can see yours. On my end, your screen's a little bit behind too with your voice. I don't know why that's the case, but that's just kind of how it is, I guess.
Yeah, that sucks. That really sucks. So we did get a comment about Bronny, just saying that he wishes that he stayed in college, and I do too. Some of it, I think it is family influence and agent influenced, because I think that they do a really good job of marketing the player and forcing a situation where a clutch client would go to. And very clearly there was still interest even after a down season, a season where before it started, he underwent cardiac arrest. I think that they do a very good job of setting up their clutch clients for not only for success in terms of a landing spot, but forcing their way to a spot and being calculated with it. It sort of made it worth it for Bronny. But yeah, I do wish that he did stay in college as well.
I also agree with that. I feel like he could have had increased at least increased his draft stock, maybe eventually gotten to the first round, but he made his decision, and I think he'll still get drafted, and I think the Lakers will still pick him, but we'll see where and what really comes of it.
Are we wanting anybody in particular at our 56 spot? It's so late into the draft, and we might only have 2 viewers at that point, but I'm just sort of thinking, I hope that we select a guy that I ended up watching. Mainly because when we did this last year and we were streaming all 6 hours of the draft, that was one of the few players that I didn't watch out of 60 something. That was Annoying.
That was
Blazer
unlucky.
select.
Oso
Ighodaro.
Mm,
Okay, this is
another Marquette player. I saw him play too.
okay. So this is going to us.
This is going to us.
Yes, Phoenix is picking Oso Ighodaro at number 40. The Suns are trading the Knicks
Huh.
51 and 56. When did they get 51?
When did we get 51?
We didn't have 51 at all. What in the world?
Three-way trade?
Somebody's got to do some clarification. But let's talk about Osa. As we were freaking talking about the Suns, let me
Yeah, that's crazy actually.
I gotta get over to Oso. Entire screen, because that's a solid selection.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that I preferred Mogbo in the sense that I think that they both provided the same thing, but Mogbo was a little bit more of a stronger player, as I freaking have Osa ahead of Mogbo. Just I'm probably gonna make that change later. But Oso, he's perhaps like the best passing big in this class. Like, he really finds cutters. He's a switchable defender. He is a little bit on the slender, smaller side at 6'9", 200 something pounds. And I think that he does a good job at adjusting to contact and getting off some points in the posts and on contact finishes. Now, he was not a jump shooter one bit. He is straight up an inside guy. And the lack of shooting is really going to hurt him. But at the same time, this is a guy that is, yes, a little bit on the slender side, but you are getting somebody that can defend in the paint a little bit, can switch out on the perimeter a little bit, which would make him really nice in a switch-heavy system. I'm not sure if Phoenix is going to run a switch-heavy system because Budenholzer has been more of like a drop coverage defensive coach. But I think that he's just a really solid development big and can be a versatile spot, playing in spot minutes as a versatile screen-setting offensive hub, similar to like how a Yusuf Nurkic was not too long ago. Think of him as a Nurk. I think of him as a Wendell Carter. And that's an exciting pick, given the fact that he is also able to defend and finish at the rim, do everything that Nurk couldn't. So, very happy with the selection.
Yeah, no, I like it a lot too. He wasn't really on my watch list. I was thinking more of a like Jamal Shed type, someone who can either be a distributor or come off the bench and provide some really good defense and potentially some playmaking. But I like Oso a lot. I think he has a lot of talent. He has the physical skills. He does not have the longest wingspan, which is not ideal for someone that might be playing the center position. Yeah. But he's aggressive. He has a really high motor. He's willing to work. He's willing to get down and dirty for boards and play some really good defense. So I'm excited to see what he can bring to a Phoenix Suns team that was missing both of those dramatically, and that was exposed in the Timberwolves series in the playoffs.
Oh, yeah, to put it lightly, exposed. Yeah. But the weird thing about the reporting of this is I believe the Knicks already had 51. And we just traded with the Knicks.
I have no idea how this works. I hate how the NBA does their trades on draft day. They are the worst. I hate it.
At least the reporting of it really, really sucks.
And they don't change it on like the broadcast either. So you're just like, oh, yeah, they're going to the Trailblazers, and you have to check Twitter. And then you go on Twitter, it's like, this is a mess. I don't know what's actually.
And you're getting spoilers. Not
good. It's terrible. It's so bad.
Okay, so that is interesting. So unfortunately, I just saw this Sixers pick because I am trying to find out how in the world did we trade away / get 51. But I would have selected Adem Bona with that pick.
I would have liked Adem Bona too. I liked him a lot.
And I
like
think of
Adem
it.
Bona.
So I think of him as like a Gafford, as just a strong, athletic, vertical threat, which is exactly what the Mavericks ended up getting and helped him reach an NBA Finals. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to be that from day one, Adem Bona, but I like Adem Bona quite a bit as a lob threat, as a rim protector, as a rebounder. A little bit undersized, but I would have liked that pick just a tad bit more. But I'm fine with Oso, and I still need to figure out the trade details of it, because that's just very weird the way that they are reporting this.
Yeah,
he's an Arizona guy as well.
Adem Bona is very interesting for sure. Yeah, he's only 6'8", which is tough if you're gonna play him at center or even power forward.
Yeah,
but he plays like he's 7'1". He can jump out of the gym. He's an extremely athletic, physical, big man, and he's willing to do everything down on the post. He's willing to fight for you to get boards, offensive and defensive. He's willing to put his nose to the grindstone and really lock you down on the post as well. He would have been a really fun pick for the Suns, and I think he would have fit in perfectly. It just would have been tough because if you're going to try and start him at center, he's going to be shorter than Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
And then you're also trying to fit Dunn in probably at that 3 spot. That would just kind of look – I feel like that would cause maybe some height issues.
Sure. But I also think that they played it pretty well with Bismack Biyombo, and I felt like Durant always develops a nice two-man game with their bigs, as Adem Bona ends up getting picked by the Sixers. Good pick. I mean, we essentially went straight over into the Adem Bona profile, so I don't think that I need to share my screen, which is honestly a good thing for now, mainly because I hate going back and forth between it and having to wonder if it is showing on the screen. But pretty good pick. I mean, I'm curious if that means an exit for a Paul Reed and that they try to go after somebody with a bigger salary. Again, I mentioned to you a guy like Kyle Kuzma, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they try to get a supercharged guy in like a Jeremy Grant. Just throwing out some options with using Paul Reed's salary and some of the draft capital that they have. But if they do keep him, that's totally fine. Adem Bona as a third string center is pretty valuable. You can't teach athletic traits like that with them. Yeah,
and he's a hard worker. He's gonna run around. He's gonna fight for the ball, and that's something you could use coming off the bench. It's always, I feel like, what you're looking for in an NBA bench player is someone who's willing to work and really wear down either the starters when they're playing against them or wear down the second team or the opposing team and make them work.
Sorry, I'm really trying to find this clarity to the trade details. I think I'm gonna be rung up on it.
No, it's fine. It's an important trade for us for sure.
Okay, so Woj says that we traded 51. Shams is saying that the Knicks already had 51 to begin with, which is the correct thing. Man.
So we did. So is that our only second round pick we have? Like, we've gotten rid of 56?
Okay.
51?
So the details. So 51 was I don't remember who had 51. I could check real quick who had 51 beforehand. Never mind, I can't do that. The Wizards. So we traded a second round pick. Not one that we got back from the trade down yesterday. We traded away one of the Boston second rounders that we got last summer for 51. And then we used 51 and 56 to go up to 40.
Got it. Okay.
So we don't have to talk about Bronny James as a potential Phoenix Sun. I know that happy about.
Thank God.
Oh, I love this pick.
I like this pick too.
Oh yes, I love this pick. Let's take our time with this guy. Mr. KJ Simpson from Colorado. So that's 3 players, I believe. 3 players from Colorado. Let me go find him real quick. KJ Simpson ended up number 37 on my board. Just an insanely fun shot creator. Really knows how to rise over the top of defenders, really knows how to play in isolation and in pick and roll. He's really seasoned whenever he has opportunities on the ball. But off the ball, he shoots really well from downtown. He's shot 43% on 5 attempts a night. And his offense and his ability to run pick and rolls and run isolation and be a shot maker is going to be his best skills. And again, he's 6 foot. I think we've mentioned it so many different times with players who are 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2", and he's on the lighter side at 187. It's not ideal, so he's going to be a defensive issue regardless of how great of a hustler he is. I think of if he is able to put the defense together a little bit, even if he is as competitive as he is, I think of like a Jose Alvarado. At the very, very best, if you are able to go ahead and develop him right, I see a Fred VanVleet, an undersized guard, will provide the energy, will pass the ball really nicely, and will be able to shoot it pretty well. The only difference being Simpson is a much more efficient player than VanVleet has been in his career.
Yeah. I mean, I think what he's going to be is going to be a microwave scorer off the bench, which is going to be really helpful for some teams. And going to the Hornets, I think it's going to be something really nice for them because I feel like they've really got some good pieces in their starting lineup, but off their bench, I feel like they're missing a lot of options, and I think he can bring a lot of options to that in the long term. And maybe in the short term, while the team looks to get better, he's going to be a good starting piece. And I think either way, he's going to be a good scorer in the NBA. He's going to be good off the dribble, and I think he'll be able to provide some catch and shoot offense as well.
So, okay. Man, I'm happy with how this Suns draft is going. I don't know. Okay. So, one of the cases, because I'm still stuck up on that Ighodaro pick, I'm really trying to process it. So, Bona had twice as many turnovers than assists last year at UCLA. That was one of the big knocks, is that he can't be a DHO guy, a designated handoff guy. And we had an issue with turnovers pretty much all season, and Oso, being the playmaking big that he is, never really turned the ball over at Marquette. And getting a backup big that can do that, I mean, it seems like they are still trying to find some of the more big man offensive hubs, being able to pass a little bit, just do a little bit of everything. It's good that they're moving off of Drew Eubanks for that matter, so that's a very good sign. But it's also a matter of you don't want to be stagnant in the offense all the time. And there were certainly points with Eubanks that it was extremely stagnant. And I think I'm warming up to it now. I liked Bona, but I'm warming up to this Ighodaro pick way more. Djurisic. Okay. And this pick is going to Atlanta. So they flip-flopped. So Atlanta, with this Houston pick that they got in the AJ Griffin trade earlier today, just moved up one spot. And I believe cash is being sent out. But Nikola Djurisic, very similar to one of the guys that was drafted already. And that was hilariously that was my comparison. Was somebody already in this draft class, Nikola Topic. But Djurisic, like Topic, they're essentially just tall point guards that are really good passers, really good manipulators of the defense, and shows good enough elevation and very enticing shot creation, while also having some defensive effort issues and defensive athleticism issues. And if we're talking about it in the sense of Atlanta getting a player like that, it's fascinating.
Mhm.
They end up getting Reeves yesterday. They didn't have any other picks after that. But I was a big fan of a Kobe Buffkin coming out of last year's draft. Not saying that Djurisic is this guaranteed backup point guard for this squad, but I am curious if this is a situation where you have Buffkin sort of slide over as a backup 2 guard, and then from there you try to utilize some of your other contracts to offload. 'Cause I know that they are trying to offload Clint Capella. They are trying to get off of one of their starting guards. It's a solid pick, given that there really wasn't a clear-cut playmaker and distributor
Yeah.
on that end. And they get exactly that, and that's not the biggest need, but it is a need, and they get that done.
Yeah, I mean, I think if they do trade a Trae Young oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name. But if they do trade one of their young star guards, I think he's going to be a great facilitator for either one of them, and one of them can become a more catch and shoot or like in transition kind of scorer. I think both of them would be better at. I think he can help facilitate an offense that's just kind of become ISO heavy with those 2 guards and kind of turn it into a more team style offense, which I think is something that Atlanta kind of needs.
Yeah, especially with Quinn Snyder in particular. He has pretty much always had a really good distributor at the helm of the offense, whether that have been a Ricky Rubio, a Mike Conley in their days. And I'm trying to remember a couple. I feel like there was one more star, George Hill. George Hill is the other guy that I'm thinking about. Very good distributors, and yeah, they have Trae Young as probably, I would say, a top 5 distributor in the league, or top 5 distributing point guard in the league. But that could be a discussion for later. But not having that off of the bench, it felt like that was always a necessity for Quinn Snyder teams, and it's just a solid pick. I don't have too many strong thoughts on it. I don't think that it affects much of their current core as much as I tried to milk it by saying that, they try to offload a number of salaries off of this. I don't think it changes too much of it as I begin talking it through. But he's going to be helpful when given the opportunity.
Yeah, no, I think at the very worst, you're getting a good facilitator off the bench who's going to be able to elevate a bench that kind of needs it and gets those bench players in the positions where they can succeed. And provide some much needed offense and playmaking off the bench for that Hawks team.
Absolutely. So the Heat are up. I wonder what they were interested in order to trade down one pick. I would think with like second round picks, you only trade up if you're moving up a substantial amount. Otherwise, do you really need to trade up one spot when you're already interested in so many guys that are in this range regardless?
Yeah.
So Miami, they picked up Khalil Ware. Oh, looks like the pick is going to happen during a Hidden Valley Ranch commercial. Pelle Larsson from Arizona.
That is absolutely a Heat player.
So I had he was one of the last guys that I watched coming into this. Let me share my screen again. It's so complicated to share my screen. But he didn't come out too high on the board. Came out as number 50. But how nitpicky can I be when every one of these picks are going to be project guys anyways? Very good shooter. Very, very good shooter that can be put in so many different actions, whether that be on the break and transition, lifting from the corner, some floppy actions. Immediately, he probably becomes like a Sam Hauser for this team in my eyes. He does need to speed up his release. He needs to be a little bit quicker on the defensive side, similar to his teammate Kashad Johnson. But you're just getting a straight shooter in Miami, and a sizable, is it sizable? 6'5", 6'6"? That's pretty solid. You get yourself a pretty sizable shooter, and they struggled pretty mightily on that end. I mean, Butler isn't much of a three-point shooter. Bam isn't much of a three-point shooter. Yeah, they have Duncan Robinson and Terry Rozier as probably your only redeemable shooters, but they didn't have too many of them throughout their entire time as a true championship contender in the last couple of seasons. So good on them. Good on Miami to bring in some good shooting.
Yeah, no, I mean, I loved watching Arizona basketball this past season, so I'm probably a little bit biased, but Larsson was always an exciting player to watch. Yeah, his stats may not jump off the page. I mean, they look a little bit slow on defense, but I don't know if it's necessarily because of his lack of athleticism. I think he's quick. I think his quick feet, he may get a little bit lost on defense, but I think it's something when you're going to be on a Heat team, that's something that can be kind of worked around or even improved. He is the definition of a hustle player. He's always running around. He's always in on the fast breaks. He's always willing to put in work. And he's always there on the offensive boards, fighting for those offensive boards. It's something that just fits right in with the Heat. And by the way,
I think that's a fine thing. We'll turn it down just a tad bit. Yeah, I had that 10 volume. I think that's okay.
It should be fine.
I'm excited for particularly, I'm going to go ahead and see who's my best available right now. Ooh, Trey Alexander. He's definitely my best available right now. But not Johnny Furphy, Kevin McCullough, Jalen Bridges, Jamal Sheed, Cam Christie. Is there any of those names that you like in particular that you're surprised are as low as they are right now?
Yeah, I mean, Cam Christie obviously is the one who stands out. He's probably one of, if not the best shooters left on the board. He's really got high upside. He's an exciting young player coming out of Minnesota. And I'm kind of surprised a team like the Heat did not pick a player like that. That's someone that they could use, a really good shooter, and instead they went with Pelle Larsson. I don't know if that says more about Pelle Larsson or Cam Christie, but I'm surprised that he's still on the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, it is a Trey Alexander. I'm a lot higher on him than the consensus, mainly because I thought that he showed some pretty decent 3-level scoring ability whenever he had the ball in his hands during his time at Creighton. When I first heard of his name, I thought he was I think there was some other player on the board that I thought was a little bit taller than he is. Jared McCain was somebody that I thought was taller than he is, but he is a guard, and I think that Alexander showed some pretty decent passes when he was driving and kicking. I think that the length and his ability to make plays defensively was pretty solid. Really utilized his wingspan. Oh, that's an awesome pick. That's a good pick. But just to wrap up on Alexander real quickly, man, I think that he's going to be a hell of a shooter, a hell of a scorer off the bench for any team. I think that he has plus athletic traits and should have already been picked by now. But I'd like for you to take the floor for this pick for the Raptors here.
So Jamal Shead's going to the Raptors. Oh yeah, I see him now. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great pick for the Raptors. I love Jamal Shead or Sheed. I think he's a great. I mean, he is just a player you want on your team. He's extremely aggressive on defense. He reminds me of almost like a Gary Payton, the shorter guy, but's willing to really get up in your grill and really harass the ball carrier and really sound on defense. He's got really good footwork. He doesn't get beat very often off the dribble. And he's willing to, even though he's only about 6 foot, he's willing to go in and get those offensive rebounds. He is just, I mean, he's the epitome of a Houston basketball player. This guy He's a little shorter, a little bit stouter. He's willing to, I mean, if you're watching on ESPN right now, you just see these defensive plays. He's going over with players like Hunter Dickinson and locking them down. He is in my opinion, one of the better, if not the best defensive guards in the draft, even though he's only 6 foot. And he's still explosive for being so small and can really play. He really plays above his height. Offensively, he might have some things to work on, but he's a good facilitator. He makes those around him better. And he has an all right jumper. He can really shoot the ball sometimes, and he can really get hot from all over the court. And I think I really like him a lot, for sure.
Yeah, aside from the lack of a mid-range shot, which is something that I think everybody should have in their arsenal, I think it is an important shot, especially in playoff basketball. I see a lot of TJ McConnell in him. The way that he is able to be that gritty, small hustle guy, the way that he is able to throw through tight windows and find cutters with ease. As a smaller guard and still be able to finish at the rim, he shot 61% at the rim as a 6-foot guard. He's an impressive guy. He came out as number 38 on my board, and probably one of the more underrated players in this draft class for sure. As the Clippers select Cam Christie.
I like that.
So I think the most basic answer and the most basic comparison to him is his brother, Cam Christie.
That's fine.
So again, he is, like we said, he is a very legitimate shooter. He shot 39% from downtown on 10 attempts per game per 100 possessions, which on that volume, that's a really damn good shooter. He's also a very legit mid-range shooter who can come off of pin downs. I think that he turns his body real well defensively and can mirror ball handlers pretty well. But he's not a finisher. He only made 29% of his floaters, 42% of his finishes at the rim. He is a little bit weaker of a player given his 190-pound stature and his more slender frame. But he should just definitely be a guy who comes in, catch fire from beyond the arc, from the mid-range. And I can certainly envision him, if he is not, I would be surprised if he isn't like a 10-year pro on like third string benches being in the Langston Galloway role.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's probably on the lower end of his abilities too. I think he can be a really dynamic shooter for a team that kind of needs an outside shooter, in a Clippers team that needs that. And I think at the very worst, he's going to be an explosive kind of microwave option off the bench. He's going to come in, shoot some threes, make a few, and really keep the team in the game while the starters are out, while Kawhi and Paul George, if they're healthy, are taking a breather. And I think he has a lot of potential offensively. And I think that's kind of his upside, is if he can reach that full offensive potential, maybe develop a good mid-range game, and maybe develop a driving game, then I think he could be a complete offensive player, and that would be really big for a Clippers team.
And for a Clippers team that I do think that while it's a good pick for the Clippers in terms of getting in some pretty good shooters, they are also a team that struggles with size. At the same time, I don't think that there is anybody viable from the big man spots left for them to take. And I do think that just bringing in more shooters, you can't have no shooters at all. And by the way, they still have Kawhi, a really damn good shooter. I think they're bringing back Harden, who's a really damn good shooter. Same with Norman Powell. And Terrence Mann kind of fell off from beyond the arc, so maybe that's sort of what you have in mind, is potentially somebody that can compete with the Terrence Mann if you're able to develop Cam Christie in the right way. But you can't have you probably would prefer shooting more than any other skill in the NBA. And getting one that was as willing and as efficient as Cam Christie was, it's beneficial for any and every contender.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so this pick is happening during a Netflix commercial. Isn't that great? Somebody's going to be the next Nikola Jokic, get picked in a Taco Bell commercial. Antonio Reeves. So this was one of the guys that I did not have listed or on my watch list, but I do have the Ringers evaluation of him up, if they actually have him on there. What's his name? Antonio Reeves, I just said.
Yeah.
So he came out as number 49 on their board. They described him as a player with shades of Alec Burks, as like a knockdown shooter with a great looking floater. He describes it as the most beautiful floater in the class. Just a really talented shooter, skilled in the mid-range, can really do some good stuff as a dribble pull-up guy. And he's pretty good at the rim, but hasn't really developed the ability to drain threes off of screens or off of handoffs like how you possibly could see with a Klay Thompson, and would probably need to dribble into his shots instead of coming off of full sprints and handoffs and whatnot, and that he has a very lean frame that is very limiting on the defensive end. So that's sort of the basic breakdown for him. Now, I believe he's going to New Orleans.
Yeah,
I mean,
so.
It makes sense given that I think that they are going to trade Brandon Ingram. I feel like at this point it is a guarantee, and they are going to elevate Trey Murphy and Herb Jones into the starting lineup. And they don't have too many more off of the bench. They selected a center last night in Yves Missi. And I think just bringing in more wing depth, and with the skill set that is shown to us and being told by the Ringer, that's a pretty solid skill set to have.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be a good scorer coming off the bench for a Pelicans team that is going to be lacking it once they go to that bench. I think he can just go in, kind of get his own shot off the dribble, and he doesn't really need to rely on others to make him better, which is a detriment and a positive, because, as you said, he doesn't do particularly well with getting those dribble handoff threes and those shots like that. So that's kind of an issue. But being able to just go and get your own shot is really valuable, especially on a bench spot, which I think is probably where he would be playing for a Pelicans team, especially in his first year or so.
Yeah. I am going to take a quick piss. I will be right back in a minute.
All right. Well, I guess it's just me then. So we have up next San Antonio again. Let's see who they decide to go with here. They could just go someone best available. I don't really know who would be best available right now. I would really like to see them get maybe a more veteran presence, an older guy like a Keyshawn Johnson. I think he'd fit well with that team, a bigger defensive player, willing to go and get offensive boards and fight for those. I think he'd really fit in well with them. Excuse me. I think he could really bring a hustle and fight to a younger team and really help establish a winning and strong culture there, even though he is going to be a rookie. He's an older rookie. He's already, I think, 24, I believe. Not exactly sure. He's already 23, but he's a bigger guy at 6'6", 224. He's not very tall, but he's very big and strong, and he's willing to get dirty on the boards, on defense. He's athletic. He has pretty solid feet, and he can make his shots. If he's given the shot and it's wide open, he can make them for sure.
All right, Ian's back.
Welcome back, Ian.
Oh, I
We
appreciate
missed
it.
you.
I appreciate it. So the Spurs pick is in. I think I've done a better job letting everybody know the pick is
Yeah,
in.
you've been nailing it. Even though it's been a lot faster, I feel like.
Yeah.
This
Oh my. Hold
second
on.
round.
Sorry, I'm trying to get this AirPod to work
you're
real
good.
quickly.
It's all good.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, here's the pick.
Okay.
San Antonio selects Harrison
Ingram.
North Carolina. Okay.
Fascinating. He was it's funny, when I was doing my write-ups the previous 2 years, he was one of the players that we were able to write up, and at the last minute, damn near each time, I had to eliminate him from the board. So it's about time. It's a long time coming. But Harrison Ingram, let's talk about him real quickly. So he was number 43 on my board. So I believe that's a 5-pick difference. He's a strong defensive wing. That's going to be his calling card. He's a really good live dribble passer. You don't really want him like off of the elbows and just operating from there, but you want him to be in movement, off of pick and rolls. You want him to pass in that way. And I think that he's a good rebounder. He was an improved shooter this past year at 39% on 5 attempts. Now, you certainly wonder, only one season of good shooting, is that going to be sustainable? He's also not a very good finisher. He only made half of his attempts there last year, which is not a great number if you are getting that close to the rim. But he should absolutely be one of the more feisty on-ball perimeter defenders who will rebound. He'll operate as a passer and as a screener. I think that at 6'5", 234, he has the body to be a bit of a deterrent there. See a little bit of Aaron Nesmith and a little bit of like a hypothetical Nasir Little.
Yeah, I mean, ideally he becomes your prototypical 3-and-D guy. He can really go out there and give you hustle off the bench right away. He's going to lock down some players. He's going to be really fun to watch on defense and on the board, so that's going to be really nice. And if he can develop a shooting game and show that he can be consistent after that 1 year of good shooting, that can really be a big boon for a Spurs team that's just looking to find playmakers on defense and on offense. And I think I like Harrison Ingram. I think he has exciting potential, and I think this is a good pick for the Spurs.
They definitely had a weird sort of 2 days. They bring in their point guard, and assumedly like their number 2 point guard or their third string point guard, whatever you want to call Juan Nunez to be. They selected another guard that they subsequently traded away in Rob Dillingham. That I'm still confused why they accepted that package. Like, do they think that an Anthony Edwards is going to be available for trade or be gone at that point?
Anthony Edwards?
Because I don't see the upside in taking on a first round pick and then a pick swap for the 8th overall pick from a team that for a long time, as long as they have Anthony Edwards there, is going to be really, really good. Just don't really understand the value of it there.
Yeah.
Bring in a couple of wings. This is probably like the Chetty Osman replacement for this season. It's not bad. It's not bad. I do have a lot more concerns about his shooting than I thought that I would, but he should be relatively fine. I think that San Antonio does a pretty decent job on the wing, very clearly with the best example being Kawhi Leonard. But he should definitely be a little bit more of a pretty solid bench wing for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, no, I think he has a lot of potential. I think he's going to be pretty solid on defense right away. And I think if he's
Mhm.
able to realize that shooting potential and kind of work past those flaws that you were pointing at earlier, I think he could be a really good, solid player, at least off the bench, if not maybe contributing on the first team of the San Antonio team. I think he'd be really exciting to watch.
So we got a blockbuster trade for you. The Charlotte Hornets are acquiring Reggie Jackson
Yeah,
for three unprotected second-round picks. Now that's quite a bit.
it is.
That is quite a
For
bit,
Reggie
especially if we're looking at a team like Charlotte, who is going to be bad. They're going to be taking on money. It's funny, they had already acquired him, I think, 2 seasons ago when Reggie Jackson got traded from the Clippers to Charlotte. So are they going to finally value him? Are they going to keep him on the roster? Because I won't lie to you, like 3 second-round picks, all unprotected, is kind of, I'm not going to say it's the craziest price tag in the world, but I don't think you give up 3, 4, 5 second-round picks for a guy that's not going to be on your roster, unless you're getting incentivized with some other pick.
Yeah, or maybe he's going to be another piece in some kind of other trade that they're trying to do. I don't know what that could be,
Yeah.
but that is a hefty price tag for Reggie Jackson,
Of all the people,
in my
too.
opinion. Yeah,
Backup point guard.
Mm.
Tristan Newton.
Tristan Newton out of UConn.
So,
Okay.
if my memory serves me right, yeah, he was not on my radar. I knew of the name, but he was not on my radar in particular. The Ringer had him at number 57 on their big board. So essentially is a glue guy who brings winning intangibles to the floor with a well-rounded skill set. A skilled at-the-rim finisher. He hustles, he plays hard, he rebounds, and showed some three-point upside by shooting 36% on his spot-up three-point attempts in his 2 years at UConn. He's not much of an off-the-dribble guy, and he probably is going to need to tweak his shooting mechanics. But I think it feels like a lot of this is just going to be, he's going to have to be gritty and find his way into a rotation spot moving forward. At least by the first reading, they compared him to a player similar to DeLon Wright, which doesn't sound like the worst comparison in the world. I've liked DeLon Wright for a while, and if he was able to reach that sort of ceiling, that sounds like a pretty valuable player on any winner.
Yeah. No, I think he has a potential to be a really good bench piece, a really good backup point guard for a team. He's going to be gritty on defense. He's going to fight really hard on both ends of the ball. You saw that in all the years he's played in college, and I think he's going to show that he has a good basketball IQ and knows what he's doing out there. But like you said, his potential maybe isn't necessarily sky high, but at the very worst, I think he's going to be a solid backup point guard for a team, whether that's with the Pacers or if he moves around the NBA throughout his career. I think he's going to be a solid glue guy, as was said. But
yeah. So Indy is back up on the clock. They had 3 second rounders, if my memory served me right. I know that they had like 36, 50, and 51 entering the night. So they bring in Newton, they bring in Furphy. I'm surprised that they've kept all of these picks because they still have to re-sign an Obi Toppin. They still have to, actually no, they've already extended Pascal Siakam. But I think bringing in 3 rookies for a team that made the the Eastern Conference Finals, I wouldn't say it's confusing, but I would have certainly tried to use these second round picks to move for like a Reggie Jackson type of player. Doesn't have to be at that same position, but if we're seeing 3 second round picks all unprotected being traded for a player of that type, you should probably be able to get something of value with 3 second round picks if you're Indiana.
You would think. But I don't know. I feel like a player like Tristan Newton can be a Reggie Jackson type for them. I mean, he's going to be able to come in right away, I feel, and be a contributor, probably just off the bench, but I feel like he can be a contributor and really help out that team right now. And I think it's a good pick for them at that spot. Will he be some kind of world beater? I don't think so, but I think he has the potential to be a win now type of piece for A&D and the Pacers team that's still young, but is looking to win now. And I think that he will help them out. So maybe that's why they just kind of kept the pieces. Kept the picks in the second round.
So we did just get a question. Where do you think Cam Spencer will go? I'm going to let you take the floor on that real quickly as I sort of look at the rest of the draft order.
I mean, Cam Spencer is another great shooter in the class. He shot 44% from three. He's going to be a really nice piece, probably off the bench for a team. I feel like I could see him going to someplace like Boston. He could be another great shooter off the bench for them and really kind of add more to that depth. And if they need to let someone else go off the bench, then they can. I could see him going to maybe Golden State. They need more shooters. They have Stephen Curry, but other than that, I feel like they could use another shooter coming off the bench. I think he'd be a good fit for them. Let's see.
So
the Lakers, if they're not going to pick Bronny, maybe you could go to them as well, but that's probably going to be Bronny.
It's absolutely going to be Bronny.
I mean, it has to be, right? There's no way it's not.
I mean, the Cam Spencer. What would be a good fit for Cam Spencer? I think the Mavericks would be an interesting one. I think that they are trying to get rid of a Tim Hardaway Jr. I don't think Jaden Hardy is all. I don't think that he's going to develop into the guard that they are hoping, even if he is a high upside guy.
Yeah.
But I think Dallas at the end of the second round at pick 58, I think that would be the best fit. And I'm going to say that he goes there.
Yeah.
Good show. As we did get another pick in by the Pacers, Enrique Freeman. He is a senior from Akron. Again, this was not one of the guys that was on my radar, but Enrique Freeman, according to the Ringer, their evaluation is that he has shades of like a Torrey Eason, a good fluid post scorer with good footwork, can be a good screener, and he flashed shooting potential, which is nice. Shot 37% of his threes as a fifth-year senior, so he is close to 24 years old. And a really good rebounder with his 7'2" wingspan. But again, we're going to continue to talk about an unproven shooter here, and it's going to be interesting to see because he was a high usage post guy, and he's not going to be playing in the post really at all on any NBA team, at least in a high usage role. So you are sort of looking at a player that needs to modernize his game a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, once again, Indiana's drafting an older player here with one of their later second-round picks. Back-to-back older players, both juniors and seniors at their schools. And I think he's a potential win-now guy coming off the bench. He could be good depth piece going in at the power forward spot, can give Siakam a break, but it is tough to see where he's going to find time to play. And if he can really reach that potential and if those shooting numbers were actually real. But if he can play like he did in college, I think he'd be a good, solid win now bench piece for the Pacers.
We got a brother over here talking about his OKC Thunder, just mentioning Mr. Nikola Topic. Again, I think you should be pretty excited about your second round pick, AJ Mitchell, mainly because if we are talking about a partially torn ACL that he's going to miss the rest of the season on, you're sort of missing that playmaking void that you were sort of expecting him to fill with Josh Giddey out of the realm. And AJ Mitchell is a pretty damn good distributor and a pretty good manipulator with his eyes. And you should be pretty excited about that if you are expecting him to be a backup. I would expect him to be a third stringer because your team is just so deep with guards like a Cason Wallace and Isaiah Joe. But if you're still looking for a distributor, I think you got another one immediately in AJ Mitchell. I think y'all did good with that draft pick.
Yeah. I would agree.
So the New York Knicks are up, and they didn't even show me the pick. What in the world?
No, wasn't that Freeman?
It was Freeman.
Wasn't that?
I thought Freeman was the Pacers pick.
Oh yeah, they
The
traded.
Knicks were up right now.
It's Golden State right now, but they're fixed to OKC. Oh wait, what? No, Melvin. I don't know how to say the last name. Out of France.
Yeah.
Ajinsa? I don't know.
Oh, Melvin Ajinsa.
Ajinsa, yeah.
That's a good pick. I got to him this morning. I could quickly share my screen again with him. So, Mr. Melvin Ajinsa came up as number 46 on my board. So, I'm not going to say a total steal, but, this is a second-round prospect that has a very good NBA body. 6'8", 215 pounds, has a lot of length, very strong, good effort and energy, which to me seems like a Taurean Prince with his pretty average three-point shooting as well, 36% on 5 attempts a night. And you don't really want him doing a lot of things on the ball, creating, but you are getting somebody that if you were to ask him to play big minutes, I think you could certainly get a decent amount of three-point shots to be thrown up there. I think you could get some serviceable defensive performances out of him. Now, he hasn't played the game too long, like this is his first professional season. But it's a low upside pick, a low ceiling pick, but definitely a higher floor if we're talking about a guy like Melvin Ajinsa.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be a good, potentially 3-and-D guy. He's definitely going to be, he's going to have a high motor. He's going to really work you on the defensive end. And if he has the potential, and if he keeps up the potential to really develop the three-point shot, he could be a really good just rotation piece for the Golden State Warriors team. And still looking to compete with, Stephen Curry and I guess Draymond and maybe Klay Thompson if he sticks, but we'll see.
So Kyle was still going on about his Thunder, how much he likes Dylan Jones. So I ended up watching his tape yesterday and reading up on him a little bit more. I'll just put it like this: as the Warriors or the Thunder are being, at least that pick is being announced, but I didn't like the Dylan Jones pick really at all, and I'll talk about it real quickly. Quentin Post from Boston College. So again, he wasn't a guy that was on my radar. We'll get to Dylan Jones back there in a sec. But Quentin Post was number... Oh, he was somewhere. I know that I saw his name on the Ringer. Quentin Post.
To the Thunder.
Quentin Post. To the Thunder. So, I have no idea who Troy Murphy is. It's been a long time if he was a role player in our day. But by all accounts, he's a knockdown shooter at the center position. And damn, he is 43% on 3 attempts a night, which is a pretty big amount. They say that he's incredibly coordinated with really good touch on floaters and hook shots, but his hands get a little too loose on post-ups, and he does get ripped quite a bit. And he's better as a face-up guy than a back-to-the-basket player. And it says that he can spot up and pick and pop, but adding some movement would bring a unique dimension. All right, that's a little bit nitpicky. If we're talking about a 7-footer that can efficiently shoot the 3 ball, by all accounts, this seems like a very good pick for the OKC Thunder. It really does. If you're looking for some floor spacer like that, a development guy like this, it's good. I'm good with it.
Yeah. I mean, I have no idea who he is. I probably shouldn't even talk about him because I don't know anything about him. I've looked everywhere. I haven't seen him on a single mock draft. That's where I'm getting all my information.
Yeah.
And I don't see anything on him, so I wouldn't really know. I'm not gonna speak on him because I don't want to say something, but the potential to be a really good 3-point shooter at 7 foot, I mean, that's obviously enticing. And for a Thunder team, that could be a really good depth piece. So
I will say, like, with these later second-round picks, I think the thing that we have to keep into account is, like, there's a lot of contenders that are in these spots, and there are still, like a Jalen Bridges, a Kashad Johnson, that probably don't want to be selected by one of those teams, knowing that they're just never going to get the opportunity. And I think at that point, when you look at the later second round, you might be looking at some random players internationally, because the guys that we believe are actually good probably would prefer to be undrafted and be able to select where they want to play.
Where they want to go. Yeah. No, I think that's definitely a fair point.
And this is probably one of the players that is one of the guys that was projected to be undrafted or potentially be one of those guys. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw like a Kevin McCullough say, I don't want to be picked by the Dallas Mavericks or anything like that. I can certainly envision a world where that is the situation. I can also see a situation where you just take a look at the shooting out of a 7-foot big man and you say, that's pretty good.
I almost said this.
Cam Spencer. So this was one of the guys that I watched. To the Wolves. They traded it to Minnesota. Okay. So he was one of the guys that I ended up watching but did not finish my write-up on. But I thought that he was pretty surprising in a lot of ways as a shooter, as somebody that was as fluid of a mover as he is, and shot 44% on 6 attempts a night. He's a legitimate hustle guy. He's a big energy guy. It feels like we say that about a lot of these types of players, these older players. He's over 24, which is almost like a veteran at this point. But he's a legit competitor, competes on every single offensive and defensive possession, chases after boards. He's a little bit undersized as a wing at 6'3", and I don't think that he has enough quickness to be a true guard. But in the sense for Minnesota, I mean, you're really loading up on shooting, on versatile creation, whether that be on the ball or off the ball, because I think you can create your own looks by lifting from corners, by just running around and cutting. He's able to create looks in that way. And Minnesota putting an emphasis on that, especially in their backcourt, where aside from Anthony Edwards, there really isn't a guarantee in their rotation. I'm good with this. I'm good with selecting Cam Spencer, even if I prefer a couple of other guys that I hope that I get to talk about. I'm cool with this. This is a very solid pick by Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, at the very worst, Cam Spencer is going to be a really good kind of glue guy, a good bench piece for a T-Wolves team. He's going to be able to come in, shoot some threes, knock them down, hustle on the boards, really kind of provide some energy on that T-Wolves bench and kind of keep it going while Ant's maybe taking a breather and still knock down some shots. And I think that's a really interesting prospect for Timberwolves team that was so close to making it to the finals last year.
Yeah, but so far, just getting trounced by Dallas, which we'll talk about soon with Dallas coming up in a couple picks here as we're drawing to a close. I don't know what to make of Dallas going into next season, in the sense that there's way too many deep teams and too many great teams in that Western Conference. Like, I don't think that Dallas, with their current core or their current roster going into next year, would beat a team like OKC. I'm not sure if they beat a Denver. I'm not sure that they beat a lot of the teams that are going to be making some pretty dramatic improvements. It's just a very competitive Western Conference, and and I'm not entirely confident that Dallas is going to be able to replicate any sort of similar success, even if they are expected to still be this really, really damn good team.
No, I feel kind of the same way about them. I think they really peaked in the playoffs this year. I think they reached their highest potential. And I think they really, in some ways, played over their skis a little. Like, I feel like they overperformed what they normally would do. And I think it's great for them to reach the finals. Like, that's awesome for them. But I just don't know if that's repeatable with this iteration of the Dallas Mavericks, especially with, as you said, all the improvements that these Western Conference teams are already making. I mean, we've seen the Timberwolves have a great draft already. They've added more and more pieces that really fill in some holes for them, really make their team deeper and more exciting. The Nuggets are going to get better. I think they underperformed in the playoffs. Like, they could have played a lot better than how they actually did. And you have teams like the Suns, who, with a couple changes, could be a very scary team going into the Western Conference playoffs. Like, and obviously you still have the Thunder. I mean, the West is just so competitive and so tough and so deep. It's going to be tough to see a team that doesn't make any changes, which it kind of seems like the Mavericks are going to do, making it back.
Yeah. So Boston's selection is coming in here. Maybe this is just a very long name. Okay. Anton Watson from Gonzaga. So this was another guy that I'm going to have to watch after this. But the Ringer has him, luckily, as number 61 on their draft board. So just outside of being draftable, like borderline draftable. They say he's an excellent at the rim finisher. He is really good at absorbing contact, being a really good offensive rebounder. He's a good decision maker who doesn't turn the ball over often, and a pretty versatile defender. You know, being able to defend players from like Zach Edey to like wings. He's just a very good defensive rim protector because he has really good feel for the game. And there is some drawbacks for sure, as we are looking at a lack of creation as a ball handler and as a shooter, and is just a tad bit undersized as a rim protector. He is 6'8". It helps that he has a 7-foot wingspan, but is probably going to have to be a little bit more of an athlete to sort of keep that going.
Yeah, I mean, this is another one of those guys that I really just don't know a whole lot about. I just don't. Like, I just haven't done any research on him. I don't know really anything about his game. So, once again, I'm just going to have to trust the Ringer's judgment and trust that they know what they're doing, and I'm sure that they do. And, yeah, I mean, it could be an interesting prospect for them, but I can't really say what I think about it.
Yeah.
Sadly.
So, I am impatiently waiting. I don't know why they are taking as long as they are with their draft pick. We all know where they're going. And
Surely,
I
right?
know that, and I know for sure that we are going to get a breaking news title from Woj or Shams in terms of making these those graphics, letting us know, hey, Bronny is a Laker, you know.
No way.
So, do I just go ahead and jump ahead and get to the evaluation of him real quick?
Go for it.
All right. I mean, we only have a couple of more picks here, and he's one of the last remaining guys, or one of the few remaining guys left on my board. Bronny has always been a very legit defender, always had some really good instincts, great physical traits to be disruptive. I thought that he made the right basketball play, being able to pass. I thought that he had solid form. And I know that I can't remember I hope my memory is serving me right, but he was a pretty solid shooter in his senior year. And I think that there is a level of shooting upside with that, with pretty solid form. And I think that he has pretty solid hypothetical point guard skills. Now, I think the fact that he did have a cardiac arrest really hurt everything, not just from a health perspective, but from the perspective that he didn't have the proper training camp. He didn't have the proper time to get acclimated to the practices and whatnot, because he had to return mid-season. He had to be in a catch-up phase damn near the entire season, and that left him behind quite a bit. And it's just unfortunate that had to happen. But even when he did play, it did feel very shaky. He only shot 20% on catch and shoot threes this season, and him being 6'1", again, he's still going to be targeted. As the selection is coming in here,
yep, there it is.
he did a dramatic pause. So I think that there is a lot more hypotheticals with him, more so than actual value that we see or actual production that we saw at USC. But I think if you're looking at a dude with pretty solid shooting upside, very good hypothetical playmaking upside, and a very high IQ for the game, and being a good defensive guard, I say that's worth a late second round pick. I say that's worth taking a flyer on, being a project guy. Now, how much is this a PR stunt, and how much of this is them being actually interested in Bronny? I'm not entirely sure, but I do think it's okay for them to go ahead and make this selection, because I think that there is some upside with him that is going to be underrated by many in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I think his upside is a solid rotation piece for a team.
Yeah.
I think like he's not going to be a star, in my opinion. I don't think he's going to be anyone that's really going to jump off the page to you, but I think he'll be kind of that sixth man for a really good team, or maybe on a worse team, he'll be a decent starter. But
yeah,
I think that's like his ceiling. His floor, I think, could be like rock bottom. I kind of worry about that a little bit. I mean, obviously, if his health issues continue, which I pray that they don't, but if they do and they become a real big issue, I mean, he's not going to have a long career, and that's going to really stink for him. And that's something you always have to worry about when you draft this. But at the end of the day, he is a flyer, and this is a spot to pick a flyer. And I think if you're the Lakers, even if he was just the prospect and you're not getting his dad along with him, which you probably are going to, you're going to maybe be willing to take the flyer on a player like that, who's going to be solid defensively and has the potential athleticism and basketball IQ to improve in just his own game.
Yeah, I don't think that it's Drew Holiday-esque. Like, that's his absolute very, very best if he was to be instilled with some really good stuff, good development. But I think Oh, that's a good pick by New York.
Mm-hmm.
Just to finish off the Bronny stuff. Like, I do think of him at his peak more like a Deuce McBride, at his worst like a Davion Mitchell. Like, I think it's somewhere in that realm where the upside is still there in a lot of different respects. Now, this pick is not for the Suns. This is a pick for the Knicks. They select Kevin McCullough. He is a wing from Kansas. Now, I believe, if I'm looking at this right, okay, so Trey Alexander is still there. This is my second highest player remaining on my board. So if we were to share my screen right here, Kevin McCullough Jr. So I believe he is a 4-year player or a 5-year player at Kansas. He is 22 years old. I thought that he was very good attacking the rim. I thought he had a great first step, strong body, and he absorbed the contact really well. I mean, he drew a lot of fouls. He attempted 6 free throws a game, which is a pretty solid amount if you're a college guy, because let's be honest, they don't call too many fouls. But defensively, he does a good enough job keeping up with players, bumping them, finding holes in the defense to cut to spots and not just to a specific area where he is designated to go. Now, his 3-point percentage is going to have to improve. He only shot 33% in his best season, in his best shooting season. And I think that it is something to keep an eye on, something to monitor in his career. And I also don't think that he has the greatest handle. I think that at his best, he's like a Josh Hart, Torrey Craig type of playmaking defensive wing who can help you in the dribble handoff game. That can help you in like the dribble handoff game and also be able to hit a couple of catch and shoot threes.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking like a Josh Hart, Torrey Craig kind of player, maybe even like a Jay Crowder type, but a little bit smaller. I think he could be a really, I mean, obviously he's older. He's going to know, he's been around basketball for a really long time. He's going to be able to jump right into a team and kind of maybe help off the bench and be kind of a glue guy for a team. I mean, he's been out with an injury for a while, like right before the NCAA tournament. And you could see how much Kansas struggled without him on the team. And I think he's going to be just a solid NBA player coming off the bench. He's going to be able to come in, give some contributions early, and I think it's a good pick for the Wolves. The Wolves picked him, right? Or it was a trade.
I thought that was the Knicks pick.
The Knicks. You're right. He's going to come in and help the Knicks. That's right. The Wolves are picking him. Yeah.
Okay, he scared me for a second. It is reportedly being traded to the Wolves via the Knicks and the Suns. Okay. So you were right on that. Then what did they trade the 57th pick? Trade for the 57th pick too? It's a lot of rooks. It's a lot of young talent that they're trying to bring in. I mean, who else would even be the pick here for Minnesota? I mean, they brought in a lot of guys. I mean, it's 2 guards. It's a third guard, a wing. Do they look at another wing? Like, I would certainly be interested in another wing if I was the Timberwolves at this pick. Like,
I mean, at this point, I think it's best player available. I mean, you've already picked so many. They're all, and like with the Timberwolves, who's taken so many flyers, why not take one more?
Yeah.
And there's quite a few good options still left in this draft.
Jesus, I forgot about Jalen Bridges. That's surprising. Fall. He's my number 36 guy, and I hope that he ends up getting picked here soon, because I've always thought of him as just a very rock solid wing that can do just a little bit of everything. But I do want to save that for when/if he ends up getting picked here. But he's definitely one of my favorite role playing types. Nothing special, but if you're asking to him to do the little things, I think that he can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's a good shout. I think he's a potential solid 3-and-D type player for whoever he gets picked by. He shot a pretty good 3-point percentage at Baylor, 41%, and he's pretty solid and sound defensively. So, I mean, I think he's just going to be your prototypical 3-and-D guy wherever he goes if he gets picked or picked up after the draft.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess this is going to Toronto now.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Good to know. So Toronto, having already picked up, who was it? Jacoby Walter in the first round. They picked up Jonathan Mogbo. That was such a Raptors pick. Jesus, they really like going after some of these undersized, athletic, bigger forward/centers.
They love that.
And then they selected Jamal Sheed or Shed, whatever. I'm not going to look up how to describe it, how to pronounce it.
I should know his name. I should.
So I'm glad that they have gone. I thought that they were going to be stubborn for much longer with their previous core. I was thinking, yeah, they're definitely going to hold on to OG for that Knicks Mikal Bridges package. I thought that they were going to get a little bit more of like a core piece on their team for a Pascal Siakam trade instead of having a package sent around Bruce Brown, who I think that they are going to trade pretty soon here as well. But it's good that they are going down this route of a rebuild. Now, Scotty Barnes is your centerpiece. How realistic do you think, like, in a Quickly or a Barrett is going to be, like, here for the long term for the Raptors?
I don't know. It's kind of tough to tell what the Raptors' plans are these days. I feel like they're just kind of all over the place. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. Maybe you could say it's being like them being flexible with their plans, but I feel like they've been flexible for the past, how many, 4 or 5 years, and it hasn't really gotten them anywhere. So, I mean, I don't know. I think I just don't really know where they're trying to go or what their plan is, and I can't really speak to it. I think I'm just confused with what they're hoping to do.
Yeah, like all off season, like last off season, they brought in like a bunch of win now pieces. Like they brought in a Jalen McDaniels, who they've since traded away. As like, I do want to take a look at their roster real quickly, because I still am a slight believer in Davion Mitchell. I think that he can do some pretty solid defensive work, some pretty solid distribution stuff. But I think we'll get to that after the announcement of this pick. Ulrich Shamshe. So this was a guy that was on my list, but I didn't have time to get to. So we'll find the ringer. So they had him as their 60th ranked prospect. He's from Cameroon and played at the NBA Academy over in Africa. They describe him as a player with shades of a Serge Ibaka, so pretty much a really excellent interior defender who has a level of floor spacing in his game. Way more than a level. Geez, 38% on 7 attempts a night. 6'10" with a 7'4" wingspan, 18 years old, one of the younger guys in this draft class. Does a really good job at moving laterally. So this certainly just feels like a really good bet on a switchable defensive guy. But he is a little bit raw. He says he operates more off of instinct and covering up positional mistakes with athleticism instead of technicality. And he's just so young, still learning the game. And I think a pick like that is probably a signal towards what I thought they were going to do, but probably a little bit more towards that rebuilding phase, especially after all of those moves that they made in the middle of the season last year. I think this is if I'm looking at it based off of the profile and off of those few words, that sounds like a really fun player to develop.
Yeah, I mean, it's another one of those big hybrid center power forward type players that Toronto loves so much, and they've done a good job at developing them. And he seems like, in a way, almost a Pascal Siakam replacement, but bigger. And yeah. I think he's going to be a really fun, exciting player for them. And if he develops well and really shows some improvement as he gets older, I mean, him being only 18 years old is wild. That is one of the youngest players in the draft. So you have a lot of time to figure out what you want to do with him and what he's best at, and improving on those. And I think that's going to be a fun piece for a Raptors team that can really spend their time maybe rebuilding and developing players like that, and maybe be competitive in future years.
Yeah. And I wonder if because that's a lot of, so they selected 2 guards, they selected 2 bigs, they brought in the guards, they brought in the wing. I'm curious what players end up becoming available on their end if they are signaling for this rebuild. I don't think Jordan Nwora's coming back. He's a free agent. But are we looking at a potential Kelly Olynyk, Jakob Poeltl dealing away? If I'm Phoenix, I'm kind of salivating over Kelly Olynyk. The prospect of Kelly Olynyk being in Phoenix. So the last pick is coming in. Last pick is coming in right here. Come on, let me know the pick.
Ariel Hukporti out of Germany.
I need to look at this. Right. Ariel Hukporti. So this was a guy that was also on my radar. Didn't get to the evaluation point of it. But Ariel Hukporti from Germany. They say that he has shades of Greg Monroe. That's an interesting comp. So they pretty much describe him as a throwback big with really good rebounding, a really good hustle, and a nonstop motor on both sides of the ball. But he lacks a little bit more of the mobility, the being out on the perimeter, not a lateral athlete, and pretty turnover prone. And also not a floor spacer. So does this stay with Dallas? Because I could have sworn that I saw that he was going to be traded.
I don't know. I thought it was. That was my understanding that it was going to stick with Dallas.
Yeah, I'm going to check real quickly. New York is taking him.
The Knicks?
Yes.
I guess the Brooklyn Nets. Yeah,
all right.
Interesting.
I mean, it is interesting on New York's
more
end. That is
center depth. They needed that.
Yeah. I don't think it definitely doesn't signal anything about the potential free agency of Isaiah Hartenstein or the potential trading of a Mitchell Robinson. But no. I really liked Jericho Sims as their third string big, as this extreme vertical threat. And it seems like they're kind of getting a Jericho Sims-esque replacement. So I'm curious if that has anything to do with their third stringers, and if Sims is available, I think there should be some teams that try to take a flyer on an athletic player like that.
Yeah. I mean, if I were the Suns, I'd be interested in that at the very least. I mean, Sims could be a nice backup centerpiece for whoever they try and get, and if they already got, they are going to keep Ariel, I think that's a great conversation starter for the Suns to maybe get Sims off their hands, open up a spot for Ariel on the Knicks.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we'll see. It could be interesting.
And with that, the draft is over. The first 2-day draft is over. Man, that was I don't want to get too much on this show's side of things, but let's continue talking about like just immediate thoughts about picks that you liked, picks that you disliked, teams that you didn't like the way that they went?
It's tough. I mean, there's quite a few picks that I liked. I really like I like the Stephon Castle pick by the Spurs at number 4. That was probably the first one that I was like, okay, that's a really nice fit for a team. I think it's going to really help out that team a lot because you're going to get a good shooter in there, which is something the Spurs really needed. And I think that was a great pick and a great start for a younger Spurs team. Excuse me. And I also liked, where is he? I really liked the Devin Carter pick by the Kings. I really like that kid coming out of Providence. I think he's going to be a great fit for them. I think he's going to just really come in, probably at the start a really good bench piece, come in, give some life to that bench alongside and be a distributor alongside Malik Monk and really make that bench really explosive. I think this could be really exciting for them. And I like the Suns pick. I like the Suns pick of, Ryan Dunn at 28.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be a really fun defensive lockdown player, kind of Mikal Bridges-esque. Not as offensively talented, I don't think, but I think he's going to be really solid defensively, and that's something we really need to fill in some holes. The Suns, and I really like the Jazz getting Filipowski at 32. I think that's a good value pick. I think he's going to be able to come in off the bench and really provide some in his first couple of years and provide some offensive power on that bench for the Jazz and maybe propel that team up more and go for it. And I really liked the Pelle Larsson pick by the Rockets. I really like his hustle. I mean, I think he's going to really help contribute to a winning culture there. He's a culture fit. He's a glue guy. He really is going to come in and be an excellent source of energy for a Rockets team that kind of just seemed uninterested at a lot of times last year and kind of just playing for themselves. And I feel like that's not Pelle Larsson. He's a team player. He's going to go in, fight for boards, and he's a great shooter. And for a Rockets team that doesn't have too many of those, I think it's a great fit for them as well.
Is there any selections that you disliked?
That I disliked. Not that I can think of. I feel like all of the picks that were made definitely had like reasons for them. I don't think there was a pick that I like really hated that I can think of. Dylan Jones out of Weber State maybe was my least favorite. I just don't really see much upside with him. And to pick him at 26 in the first round, I just don't know if that's the move. And especially to trade for him too. That's kind of interesting. But yeah, I maybe just don't know enough about Dylan Jones to really make an educated decision on that. But yeah.
I'll start on the positive sides before I talk about Dylan Jones, because spoiler, that's probably the pick that I really don't like the most. So the Wolves getting Dillingham for the price tag that they got him at, just man, that's very like it. You already don't have a whole lot of picks in Minnesota, but you already have a pretty bright future with Anthony Edwards at the helm. And to utilize the last remaining assets that you have to go ahead and grab somebody like this, a potential Mike Conley replacement and a potential long-term backcourt mate with Anthony Edwards, that's going to be very electric. That was my number 2 prospect on my board, and I can't say enough good things about that pick and that trade, because that's going to be very electric for a while. If we're looking at some of the other picks that I liked, I mean, I liked Duron Holmes, even though I don't think that they had to trade up. Well, never mind. New York was probably going to take a big, given that extension for Anunoby. But I've been a big fan of Duron Holmes. One of my guys throughout this entire draft, entire draft season, with some bias, of course, but Denver getting themselves their backup center for the foreseeable future that can pretty much do anything and everything that is asked of him. That's pretty nice to have instead of continuing to go with Aaron Gordon as your small ball 5 or DeAndre Jordan as your backup 5. Old ass DeAndre Jordan.
Yeah.
Bub Carrington was one of my bigger my guys. I had him as a potential lottery guy. And him being the shot creator that he is, given that there really isn't a whole lot of great ones over there in Washington, I think getting Bub Carrington, who I believed was a better prospect than Isaiah Collier, which is a hot take in the draft community, I think them doing right by me is it's really fun to see. And over in Washington with Alex Sarr, if they decide to keep Kyle Kuzma, they're going to have a really, really good time over there. Those are probably my 3 favorites throughout this whole day or this whole draft period. Now, Dylan Jones, I'm going to rip the pick a little bit because I didn't have my full thoughts on him yesterday, so I didn't give a full-on thought on when we were live yesterday. But among all 53 players that I watched and wrote up on, he was my 53rd.
Yeah.
He was my 53rd. Just very much reminded me so much of David Roddy. And I know that's like the basic comparison when it comes to body type and height. But his just like Roddy, his go-to when he was in college was to play bully ball and just lower his shoulder right into players to create space or to finish at the rim, which players can still do that. But when I look at some of these teams that not only have these bigger wings, but they also have supersized, like they have supercharged them with a lot of size, Jones is not going to be able to bully through a lot of these guys anymore. And I don't think that he has the greatest form in the world. I don't think that he has any off the dribble shooting ability. He's a good passer. He's a good playmaker. And he's a decent finisher at the rim. Decent. He's a really good one. 60% when he shot at the rim last season. But when there's no athletic traits to your name, when you can't really be an above the rim athlete and you struggle as much as you do defensively, as well as not having a big enough scoring bag, you don't have an ideal role, especially if you're 6'4". You're not going to be able to keep up with the quicker guards, and you are more than likely going to be, while a deterrent with your size and being physical on wings, you are not going to do a very great job of keeping up with those wings. Like, I really do believe he is that athletically deficient. So I sit here and I say, you didn't give up any picks for Caruso, which was the funniest part of it all. But you gave up 5 second-round picks to pick somebody that I think probably was going to be a mid to late second-round pick if he was picked at all.
Yeah.
Not the biggest fan of it. But I can, I will say, I'm not a fan of it, but I can see a world where he can become like a Kyle Anderson if he was to sort of slim down a little bit. Because I do think that the passing IQ is pretty solid on his. I don't want to be totally negative on him, but that's the one redeemable trait that I look at and say, that's probably the most translatable NBA skill.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with your evaluation of him. I just feel like he's lacking in a bunch of different areas. I don't feel like he's necessarily super quick. I don't feel like, as you said, his form is clean. I don't know if that's going to be able to translate very well to the NBA. And he is a bigger body, which is nice. But I just don't see how he's going to be able to translate to the NBA. And also your price that you paid for him, as you said, is borderline absurd. And I feel like, I don't know, I'm just not the biggest fan of the whole situation. And I feel like if you had gotten him in the second, like mid to late second round, I'd be like, okay, that's a fine pick. That's a person that you can maybe develop into something interesting. He has maybe interesting tools. That being that he's tall, pretty much, and bigger body, and can pass pretty decently. But I don't know. I'm just not the biggest fan of that pick, to say the least.
And I forgot to say another pick that I really liked. I'm surprised Dalton Connect fell to 17, even if I thought that there was, even if I thought that he had a very low floor. I didn't think that it was enough to say that he should not be a lottery pick, and the Lakers got a good steal out of that. I'm not happy for Lakers fans, but it's a good fit for the Lakers and what they plan on doing with what a lot of people hope to be a really successful coaching career for JJ Redick.
Yeah, no, I think that was a great first round pick for the Lakers. I think he fills a hole for them, which is maybe not consistent shooting, but potential elite shooting, which is something they've really lacked for the longest time. I think he can fill in that void quite well. He's going to be a hustle player. He's going to be going after the ball, and it's something that's also needed on the Lakers team.
Is there any players that went undrafted that you are either surprised by or you wish was picked up, and would you want to see any of these guys on the Summer Suns, Summer League Suns, or the Valley Suns?
I talked about him last night, but the fact that Keshad Johnson wasn't drafted was very surprising to me. I think he's the best player that's left on the board right now of anyone that was undrafted, and I think even towards the end, he was still one of the better players still. And I'm surprised he didn't get drafted. And maybe it's something to the effect like what you said earlier, that like towards the end of the draft that he just didn't want to be drafted at that point. But I think he has all of the tools. He's athletic. He can shoot. His form is maybe something that can be tweaked and maybe become a little bit quicker. But he is a good knockdown corner three shooter when he's open, and he can get to those open spots on the court, and he's able to play make off that as well. He's not a great dribbler, but he can take people off the drive and really get physical down below in the post. And then once you've talked about his defense, I believe he's one of the better defensive players in the draft. He's big, he's physical, he can guard 1 through 5. He's just he's one of the better rebounders in this class as well, I think, too. He's willing to go and box out bigger guys. I mean, I remember watching the Purdue-Arizona game, and he was just always on the boards fighting Zach Edey and getting boards over him, and it was impressive to watch him do that. And I really enjoyed watching him play. So to see him not get drafted, it's very interesting, and I would love to see him on the Suns. Get another guy like a Ryan Dunn who can come and play defense and get boards. And I think he has higher shooting upside than Ryan Dunn as well. So
interesting.
I would find that interesting.
I won't deny it. Like Keshad actually showed some semblance of a shot during his time at U of A, or his one season at U of A. He was, I would say, I keep saying one of the last guys, but I would say he's one of like the 3 to 5 last players that I ended up scouting. Yeah, he is definitely one of the better. I think he's one of the 3 best available that's on my board right now, behind Trey Alexander, Jalen Bridges, and yeah, he's my 3rd best available player. You told me yesterday that he reminds you of like a Jaime Jaquez.
Yeah, maybe not a Jaime Jaquez more I thought about it, but yeah.
I saw a lot of like a Grant Williams and a Jay Crowder. I saw a lot of that in his game.
I meant Jaime Jaquez more of a surprise player, kind of like people who really didn't see it translating to the NBA very well. But I meant it more of like that. Maybe that was just the Pac-12 similarities between them that made me think of Jaime Jaquez. But yeah, now that you say it, Jay Crowder and Grant Williams are really good comparisons for what I think Keyshawn Johnson can be.
He really impressed me defensively. Now, I only had 3 things of note in terms of strengths and 4 weaknesses, but it's not to say that it outweighed it at all. Because I do think that he has a little bit of an issue. Same thing with Larsson with a slow developing jumper and how he needs to speed that up a little bit. But I thought that he operated well as a pick and pop guy. He shot 39% from 3 this year. I thought he was extremely engaged on and off the ball defensively. Really worked hard to keep the shell intact, close out to shooters. And I thought he did a really good job timing when he was going to blitz or when he was going to go ahead and dig on post players. And I think just that, along with the spot up shooting, if it holds, is going to be his best skill. Now, like with a couple of guys that I mentioned earlier today, he's got to show that shooting is legit. He only shot 25% from 3 and 60% from the free throw line during all 4 years at San Diego State. So is this a true outlier year? Was there something either in his development or within U of A's scheme that allowed him to be that way? I think that's something that we could debate about, but I think you also have to keep in mind, just you don't want the ball in his hands too much. You prefer him to be a little bit more of, if you catch it, you either pass it or you go ahead and you shoot it. And if he's going to shoot it, with how he played last year, I think you should feel relatively confident that it can translate.
Yeah, he's definitely the one. I don't know if you agree, but he's probably the main one. If the Suns could get him for their summer league team and eventually maybe on their bench, I think he'd be a great rotation defensive piece for that team.
Yeah, I'm not saying for the Suns, but again, Trey Alexander is my best available on the board. He was my number 33 ranked player. But Jalen Bridges was not too far behind Trey Alexander at 36 for me. So he shot 50% on unguarded catch and shoots, and he had a 41% three-point shooting percentage all year last year. And I think just all of that provided a sort of like a baseline of what his potential role in the NBA might be. I thought that he did some good stuff in the mid-range and attacked closeouts pretty well. I thought that his ability to navigate through screens and sort of attach after detaching from his man or his ball handler is pretty good. Now, I think that as a creator, he didn't show too much of it. He only had a 17.5% usage rate, which, if you know anything about usage rate, it's you want the good ones are probably at around 22 to 25%. The greatest of NBA players are probably at 30, 35, 40%. So being at 17.5%, it's pretty low. So how much of that creation is real? Not entirely sure. But I just think that as a defender, as a screen navigator, I think that he provides a decent baseline of what a 3-and-D typical role player should be. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to seeing where he ends up in the undrafted marketplace.
Yeah, those 3 are very interesting for sure. I think those are probably the 3 undrafted that people are really going to be hunting after. Those Keyshawn, Alexander, and Bridges are going to be the 3 that people are going to be really interested in, I believe.
I don't really have too much else. I mean, I think we're just going to wait for... I think I'll just end it off with this. I mean, nothing draft related or anything like that, but is there any trades that you would like to see around the NBA? Any players that you would like in a particular destination?
I don't know. I'd have to look. I don't really know the trade situations or rumors that well. I'd have to look into those more. But But the Suns getting some kind of center would be really good, and maybe replacing Nurkic would be really nice, and maybe potentially getting a facilitator that can kind of rotate in with Bradley and Booker could be really interesting as well. I don't know where they would look for those, but I feel like there's a few options that they could go and try and pursue. And I think that could be interesting.
Yeah, they've been, at least in the free agent market, they have been heavily linked to the guard from Utah, Chris Dunn, bringing another Dunn, another defensive menace.
Yeah.
Okay. Getting a lot of updates on where these undrafted guys are going. I guess PJ Hall is a Denver Nuggets.
Oh,
which
PJ
I
Hall
didn't get to.
I'm not surprised he didn't get drafted either. I liked him out of Clemson.
He was one of my guys that I didn't get to, but he was on my list for sure.
Where did he go again?
Denver.
That's such a good place for him, actually. That's actually so good. Wow.
I think I'll look. I'll watch a lot of these guys tonight. See what I'm missing out on. I won't lie. Like I don't think if I'm gonna talk about the Suns, I think it's super complicated because in a lot of ways, I'm gonna be like, hey, hit up the teams that have a relative need at center, like OKC or San Antonio, and say, hey, you guys have a lot of draft picks. Those are devalued to you guys. So give me Kenrich Williams and 8 second-round picks. It's far-fetched. Like, that's not realistic one bit, but that's how I would go about negotiations. Hey, Atlanta. Hey, San Antonio. Victor Wembanyama is a pencil. He is a stick. You don't want him on Jokic. We have a guy that can take on that matchup. Give me Trey Jones and an Atlanta Hawks first-round pick, I think in a lot of ways, those aren't realistic. But at the same time, you should try to take advantage of those teams that have a lot of picks, because ultimately the Suns need to replenish their guys, replenish their assets. But since I can't find one that's super ideal or super great, I think I'm a veer away from talking about the Suns in the offseason. But I would go ahead and say a move that I would like to see happen in the league. Before they traded for McHale, I wanted to see Lauri Markkanen in New York. I wanted them to ship out 5, 6, 7 first round picks over to Utah. Still bring back Anunoby.
Yeah,
man,
that would have been a lot of fun.
Do I really want to see Paul George in a Warriors uniform?
No.
Do I? I think that would be just the most fun for the narratives. A fun basketball fit. I'm gonna say like DeJounte Murray in New Orleans. I think with that team in Atlanta that's trying to figure it out, I think that they should keep Trae Young. And with a team like the Pelicans, who have a relative need at point guard, while also having a trade chip in Brandon Ingram that they would like to get off of, I wouldn't be totally surprised if an Ingram Murray swap was on the table. But I am thinking, because a lot of that idea that I had for the last several weeks was based on the fact that I wanted the Hawks to pick up Alex Sarr, or at worst case scenario, Donovan Clingan, and then they end up selecting a wing. I mean, they still need a different shot creator and shot maker if you're getting rid of one of Trae or DeJounte.
Yeah.
Oh yes, that's awesome. The Suns signed on a 2-way contract Jalen Bridges. I'm happy about it. I love that. And I think I'll come out with a draft grades video later on. Probably upload it tomorrow. But yeah, I would say DeJounte Brandon Ingram swap. I think that they both fill out some pretty solid needs that are on that roster. Allows New Orleans to go down the routes that ultimately they've wanted to go down, and that's to go ahead and grab a natural point guard. You'll still have the McCollum contract, which I don't know who entirely wants that contract of $30 million, but I think that it'll just provide New Orleans with a lot of flexibility, and I think you get yourself a larger shot creator that ultimately Atlanta is still going to be in need of if you're going to trade away one of the guards, because nobody else is able to provide that, especially not Reeves.
Yeah. I agree. I think that'd be fun to see. That'd be a fun trade. But I don't know. I think a lot of teams got a lot better in this draft for sure. I think.
Oh yeah.
There's some really interesting prospects all the way through the draft, which is fun and unique, and there's a lot of different takes you can have on all of them. So I don't know. I feel like it's not as cut and dry as some NBA drafts have been previously, but that's kind of what makes this draft kind of exciting.
Yeah. All right. I think we're all good here. Do you have any final words for the third annual Three-Peat Sports Live Show?
No, I don't believe so. It was a great show.
All right. It was awesome being able to stream these last couple of nights. Yesterday night was my best episode yet. It has over 300 views now. And so I just wanted to say that I appreciate you guys for tuning into this show and trusting me to provide you with this draft content. It really does mean a lot. I put a lot of time into this. Stuart puts in a lot of time into this. So again, for all of y'all that are watching, I really appreciate you guys tuning in. And I'm excited to get done with this and start my pre-draft process for year 4 of the Three-Peat Sports NBA live show. Again, much appreciated, you guys. And I look forward to talking more ball with you guys soon. Y'all have a good day.